The BBC's Joe Pike reports.
Starmer said President Zelensky was Ukraine's democratically elected leader, and it was perfectly reasonable to suspend elections during war times. This was in response to President Trump appearing to suggest Ukraine actually started the war, and President Zelensky was a dictator because he didn't hold elections last year. The Ukrainian president's term did expire last May, but voting was legally suspended because of the war.
Recapping the top story, many ordinary South Africans have reacted with shock to the postponement of Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's 2025 budget policy statement. I am on Delambara for SAFM News headlines at 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. We take you to Durban. About 130 mils of rain recorded across the region in the last 24 hours. That's a terrific amount of rainfall. It has left surface water and flooding all over the region. A particular concern, local routes through Prospecton, the M2 between Toti and Prospecton, M7 coming away from the bluff down towards the M4 inbound, Victoria Embankment inbound, just big pools of water, some 50, 60 centimetres deep. That's a lot of rain and a lot of flood dangers this morning. A couple of breakdowns. One on your way to Pietermaritzburg at Keyridge, another on your way to Durban, just after the Linfield Park exit. Centurion, roads remain closed around the Henops River, noticeably John Foster and Rabi End and Blackwood. That side of Centurion is where the real sort of intense closures are, and that'll just force some traffic sort of looping around on alternative routes, which will cause delays. And Cape Town, crash on the Jakes Curvell Drive on-ramp to the N2 outbound. That ramp was closed earlier. They managed to open a lane, but the scene is still active. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, soccer action, Mamelodi Sundowns extending their lead in the Betway Premiership. They came from behind to beat Marumo Gallants. And in tennis action, Clara Tauson upsets the top seed Arina Sabalenka to reach the quarterfinals at the Dubai Championships. We'll have details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Today is Thursday, the 20th of February, 2025, and it's just gone 8 minutes after 6. Good morning and welcome to it, the Thursday edition of The Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane and I'm here to deliver your morning brief. Come, let us spend the next 3 hours together, informing and engaging each other and sharpening each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. Here's what's coming up on the show over the next 3 hours. Uncharted terrain, unprecedented, extraordinary, astounding. You choose your adjective or descriptor. The bottom line is, we've never been here before, at least not in democratic South Africa. The finance minister's proposed budget fails to even get out of the starting gates of cabinet approval. The political fallout is massive, as you can imagine, over the last 24 hours, with opposition parties on the one side, the parties that are outside the multi-party coalition piling on the pressure and basically saying that this is a sign of deeper trouble within the government of national unity. But on the other hand, you are seeing the GNU parties, most of them at least, seeking to downplay the divisions over what would have been a proposed hike in the VAT rate of about 2%, and that would have taken us, in terms of our VAT rate, to 17%. So we have multiple takes for you on that story. At 6:40, at about 20 to 7, we have John Steenhuisen, the agriculture minister, as well as the DA leader, to react and respond to the developments yesterday. And then we will take you inside the room of how it all transpired over, in fact, an hour-by-hour account, right? Because the postponement happened at the 11th hour, literally, like, you know, from what the Speaker of the National Assembly was saying, they were informed at about 10 minutes to 2 that Cabinet cannot agree for a speech that was meant to be delivered at 2 p.m. So we'll take you inside and give you a blow-by-blow account of what happened leading up to that moment. Tsepo Mongwai, the SABC News economics editor, will join us at the top of 7 to recap everything, including that awkward moment, which I'll play for you in the next few minutes. That awkward moment where people were gossiping and there was a hot mic not far from there. Then after Tsepo at the top of 7, we'll talk to Professor Raymond Parsons, who is a business school economist at the University of the Northwest. So just to round it off and give you some analysis, particularly in as far as what has now been stalled or perhaps even scrapped altogether, this 2% increase in VAT, what the implications thereof would have been for you and I, as well as broader South African economy. So, but I also want to know from you, how do you view this postponement of the budget speech? Is it for you a sign of things falling apart, the centre not holding in the government of national unity, or is this a matter of things working out exactly the way that they should in a multi-party coalition government, close quarter accountability, as it were, within the cabinet itself? I want to hear from you. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. Then we'll move on at about 6:45. We'll tell you this story. We've been hearing reports, the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health saying that there are now 168 confirmed cases of hand, foot and mouth disease across the province. And there's a clear distinction they want us to make, the health authorities, that is. They want us to distinguish this, that it's not the same disease as foot and mouth disease that you see in animals, but this is hand, foot and mouth disease. So the department says the outbreak is mostly affecting children in primary schools and daycare centers. So we'll talk to Babongile Mhlongo, who is the Director of Environmental Health, Communicable Disease Control and Malaria Control in KwaZulu-Natal, and that conversation coming up at about 6:45 in this hour. Right. So before I tell you about your regulars, here's what else I would like you to weigh in on. That hot mic moment when the microphones are nearby and you say something that you should not be saying. Take a listen to this conversation happening between the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, the Director General of the Department of the National Treasury, who was also part of that briefing, Dr. Duncan Pieterse, as well as the Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. At the heart of the conversation, criticism or the pushback from the SARS Commissioner Edward Kiswetter against any proposed tax hikes, where he says, actually, you have a better way of raising the revenue by actually helping me strengthen my ability to collect outstanding taxes, and you won't have to raise taxes. This angered Enoch Godongwana, the Finance Minister. Take a listen.
I'm glad you took the question about the commissioner. You answered it much better than I would have been.
Oh no, I was a bit, I was worried I should not be angry.
No, you wanted to go. No, but it didn't.
Yeah. No, you did what? No, he's making me angry.
Yes, no, it's what can it?
I said, we're discussing, even here, he comes up with this rubbish. I said, how will it help me on the 19th, even now on the 12th? He did not know that we've made provision for him for 2.5 in the new arrangement. But that 2.5 now is gone.
Yes, no, all right, you find it. What happened in here? Yeah, I'll just need to...
So there was that exchange, right? The audio is not the greatest, and the reason for that is that it's right at the end of the briefing as the journalists are wrapping up. But the microphones are clearly visible in front of these three officials, in front of them. They can see them. Then they start talking about the SARS commissioner in this way. What you would have heard there is the finance minister saying that he made me angry with his comments. Then you hear the minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni saying uyadelela. Basically, he's full of it, or he's disrespectful, or he's cheeky. However you want to translate uyadelela, withdraw delela. And then you have Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni a bit later on saying uhamba nini yena. When is he leaving anyway? Your comments on that? What do you think of that? And also share your own experiences, I suppose. Have you ever been caught in something of a hot mic moment where you were saying something about someone and it turned out they were not so far from you and they were within hearing, within earshot of your conversation? I'd love to hear some of your stories, but also reflect on the seriousness of what you are hearing in that conversation. All right, all of your regulars, we have them locked and loaded for you again this morning. Ondela Mbana with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zai Khan is watching your sport throughout the morning. Dauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered. Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. And through it all, we take your calls. 086 000 2032, your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Thursday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Hey, Ondela, good morning to you. Long time no speak, my friend.
Good morning to us. And we are meeting today, and it has been a day yesterday.
Well, I hear you all the time on the radio, so that makes up for it.
You must just from now on, switch off your mic to us. I don't want to hear anything you say.
Don't say things you shouldn't be saying. What's leading on the diary? I imagine that the fallout from the postponement of the budget would be key.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That story, it's a topical story. And the South Africans have reacted with shock, definitely, to the postponement. And the government has attributed that postponement to differences in the government of national unity over a 2 percentage point increase in value-added tax. But, however, National Assembly Speaker Utogoti Diza says the postponement won't have any tangible consequences for the delivery of government services. We will be waiting for Minister Enoch Godongwana to deliver the budget speech next month on the 12th. And we'll be actually waiting for you as well to unpack with your guests what this means to the ordinary South Africans, to the economy and to the markets as well. We move on to Wits University students are on hunger strike. They are pleading to the institution's management to allow them to register despite their historic debt. The students have been camping at the SRC's boardroom since last Friday, and the university requires students to have a debt of less than 10,000 rand or pay 50% of what they owe. And today, President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to officially open the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in Johannesburg. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola will host the two-day gathering where he will be joined by his counterparts. But U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will not attend the meeting, and this is a decision which he has attributed to South Africa's land reform policy following Ramaphosa's signing of the expropriation bill in Tulo. The embassy staff will represent the U.S. Kyle Kumalo will bring us more on this story. That's all we have for you, Tulas, and I'll be back with the news headlines at 6:30.
All right, thank you for that, Ondela. That's Ondela Mbana there. You'll be hearing from her every half hour with your news updates here on The Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Yeah, it's been a grey and rainy and dreary last few days. In fact, at least a week, at least here in Johannesburg. So let's give you a sense then of how it's going to be looking on this Thursday. 5 warnings. So as usual, we'll do the warnings and then do your highs and lows for the major centers. The first one is an orange level 6 warning. So quite serious. Orange level 6 warning. It says disruptive rain leading to flooding of roads, bridges and settlements, damage to property and infrastructure, and danger to life. And that is expected over Gauteng, eastern parts of the northwest, extreme northeastern parts of the Free State, western highveld of Mpumalanga, and the western bushveld in Limpopo. Second one, yellow level 2. Disruptive rain leading to localized flooding of susceptible bridges, roads and settlements, damage to property and infrastructure, and that is expected over the central parts of the northwest and northern and eastern parts of the Free State, as well as over the Lowveld and eastern Highveld in Mpumalanga. Then you have a yellow level 2 warning that says severe thunderstorms leading to damage to infrastructure and localized flooding of susceptible areas, roads, bridges, and that is expected over the western and central parts of the Northern Cape. A yellow level 4 warning, disruptive rain leading to flooding of roads, bridges, and settlements, damage to property and infrastructure, and danger to life, and that is expected along the coast of KwaZulu-Natal in the morning. And lastly, a yellow level 1 warning. It says damaging winds resulting in difficulty in navigation, dragging anchor, and small vessels taking on water, and that is expected between Algoa Bay and Coffee Bay. The rest of your minimum and maximum temperatures then: Pretoria 17 to 22, Johannesburg 14 to 21, Mbombela 17 to 25, Bulukwane 17 to 25, Mahikeng 18 to 23, Bloemfontein 17 to 22, Kimberley 18 to 22, Uppington 20 to 32, Cape Town 19 to 27, George 17 to 30, Gqeberha 19 to 27, and the minimum temperature in East London 19 and a maximum of 28. Durban 20 to 26, Richards Bay 22 to 27, and finally Pietermaritzburg 16 to 23.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Reigning African champions Banyana Banyana are gearing up to defend their WAFCON title in Morocco. Dr. Ellis and the girls want to deny neighbors Lesotho a moment to shine. But Mehala Dito believe their game plan is too great to stop. This is the international friendly. Experience the Southern African Derby, South Africa versus Lesotho, on Saturday, 22 February at 12:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 2. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 minutes after 6. Let's turn to this story now. Australian wildlife officers have euthanized 90 false killer whales that became stranded on a remote beach in Tasmania, south of the Australian mainland. According to officials in that country, despite rescue efforts, rough ocean conditions made it impossible to refloat the whales. This marks the latest in a series of incidents where animals have been stranded, marine animals that is, have been stranded on Tasmania's coastline in recent years. Let's speak now to Professor Alakendra Roy Chowdhury, who is a specialist in environmental and marine geochemistry at the Department of Earth Sciences at Stellenbosch University. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time this morning. So what do we understand around conditions that lead to whales and other marine animals, mammals, beaching in the kind of way that we're seeing as happened with these false killer whales?
Morning, and morning to your listeners as well. Look, this is something not really well known why that happens. One of the main reasons that this causes is basically disorientation. So whales get disoriented and they beach. Now, the reason for why the disorientation happens can be many of the things. One is that the pilot whales, they become sick, and so they don't know where they can't swim properly, so they go towards the coastal areas. That can be one reason. But the other reasons can be also when these whales are migrating, they are communicating with each other. And because of now with more shipping traffic and sonar surveys, etc., that communication breaks down. So that leads to then again disorientation and ultimately them going more towards the coastal regions. More recently, we are finding, well, we are not really finding, but we think that the environmental conditions in the waters can also be a cause. With warming oceans or with pollution, your oxygen concentrations are reducing in the water, and that can also have an impact in terms of, because they are not finding enough oxygen in the water, that they need to come up and closer to the coast. So in that sense, it's not really clear. Yeah. And then the other issue is that a lot of these whales, when they are migrating, they year after year, they pretty much follow a very same path. So either this is a learned behavior, or they are using the environmental signals to basically navigate the ocean. And because of all these recent problems in the water or changes in the coastal oceans, they don't know what those changes have happened, and they suddenly don't realize where they are, and that can cause also the beaching. So as I said, really we don't know why ultimately they beach, but one of the main reasons we think is that they get disoriented and they don't know what to do.
And this is not the first time this happens around Tasmania, is it? In terms of the mass beaching, either of false killer whales or any other kind of species of whale?
Yeah, this is, beach whaling is not a recent phenomenon. It has been happening historically, and it's not just Tasmania. There are other places as well that this happens. Tasmania falls along a main highway for these whale migration. So naturally you will find, because every year they are coming and passing through that area, so it creates more opportunities for this to happen.
So in terms of the the impact on the mammals, the whales themselves, being stranded in that way, just tell me about the biology that's involved there, because there's a narrative that says they don't survive for long after they are beached, and therefore it becomes a race against time to assist them to refloat, but it's not as easy as picking them up given their size.
Yeah, that's a hard question for me to answer, because I'm not a whale biologist, but mainly once they are beached, they are unable to breathe properly. So that can be the main reason why basically time becomes of an essence, that if we don't float them, then they are unable to breathe, because a lot of time what the way whales are working is that they are gulping a lot of that water, and water filters through their system, which brings the oxygen.
Heartbreaking. Prof, just lastly then, within our shores, we've got a vast coastline in South Africa. How frequent do we see whale beaching and the beaching of other marine life? And do we have an understanding, or perhaps even a pattern, that we're able to start predicting that under these conditions you are more likely to see it happening?
Yeah, so around our coast we do see whale beaching, maybe not in that large number that we have seen around Tasmania. But every year we hear one or two whales beaching, and a lot of them actually in our cases happen because they get stuck by the shipping traffic, because this is one of the busiest shipping lanes, the south coast of South Africa. So they get injured, and that leads to then them floating onto the beach. But our waters are also becoming more polluted, and that can increase. So far we don't see any kind of a pattern over here in terms of what will cause beaching, like the mass beaching we have seen in Tasmania. So at this moment I can't really comment on that.
No, thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Professor Alakendra Roy Chowdhury, who is a specialist in environmental and marine geochemistry at the Department of Earth Sciences at Stellenbosch University. Yeah, so there you have it then. We thought we'd give you something of a different story coming out of Australia regarding this rather heartbreaking scene that played itself out in the last few days. I'm also seeing your WhatsApp messages and your calls coming in, many of them covering the postponement of the budget as well as gossip. When you say something thinking that the person you are talking about can't hear you. There are many instances, of course. This is informed by what happened between the Minister of Finance, the Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, as well as the Director General in the National Treasury, talking about the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kisweta, and how he annoyed the Minister of Finance. And then the question was asked by the Minister, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, "Uhamba nini kanti? When is he departing the scene in any case?" So one of my colleagues, Zelma, I'm going to mention her by name, Zelma was sharing one of her stories about, someone who was talking about her on WhatsApp, and then they sent the voice note to her by accident. And the descriptions were not really kind. They were not kind to Zelma at all. But that was one of those hot mics moment. Do share yours. The number to dial 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. But also feel free to reflect on the seriousness of these conversations happening amongst colleagues, right? They are a cluster in the finance department, are the Minister of Finance and the SARS Commissioner. Anyway, let's check in with Ondela Mbana now with the latest news headlines.
Thank you. To us in the news headlines, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says if the government does not implement the 2 percentage point increase in value-added tax, it will be forced to seek another source of raising the money. Wits University students that are on hunger strike have made an impassioned plea to the institution's management to allow them to register despite their historic debt. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reiterated his view that the overall cooperation with the U.S. is crucial for his country. This after European leaders reacted sharply to U.S. President Donald Trump's denunciation of Zelensky. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. We've been mentioning the flooding and surface water dangers all across Durban. It is pretty extreme. We've just put a pickup of the Isipingo Beach Prospecton area this morning up on Twitter at Traffic SA. You can have a look at it. It really is extreme. 130 mils of rain in the last 24 hours. That's an enormous amount of water. It has left widespread flooding. If areas aren't sort of completely flooded like that Isipingo Beach area, there's just surface water and quite deep surface water lying around as well, particularly the M4 going in on the Southern Freeway. So watch for disruption there. 2 crash scenes on the Mopori Highway this morning. One at XX, a quantum off into the bushes there. Another crash on the bottom of the Mopori Highway coming into SK and Pathlari. And a big fallen tree on Atterbury Road coming inbound just before Alsatian. If you know the Pick and Pay Centre there, that's where that is. And there's some delays, obviously, on that section of Atterbury. Crash on the N3 North at Van Buren. So delays coming out of Germiston and Alberton. And Cape Town heads up a very heavy Thursday traffic coming in on the N2 passing Khayelitsha. Big traffic standing from Spine Road right through to the airport runway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Careful now, Zai. Your mic is on. Your mic is on.
Oops. Bleep.
No hot mic moments. Have you had one, by the way?
Plenty.
Plenty,
yeah? It was actually on TV where they said we were rehearsing and we were live.
Oof.
And
yeah,
didn't go down very well. It went down like a...
That's better than being heard gossiping about someone.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Someone who doesn't need us to gossip about and in fact would be happy for us to talk about them with an open mic, Miguel Cardoso. And he's really impressed with his Chargers performance.
Yo, back on top, these guys are. 12-point lead. Are they just too good?
Yeah,
I don't know,
seem.
man. It was like, hope it's not going to be a one-horse race. We need Orlando Pirates, but their match was abandoned due to a waterlogged pitch that was in Mpumalanga yesterday. They had one against Golden Arrows, but nevertheless, the Mamelodi Sundowns juggernaut and their coach Miguel Cardoso are through. They had a 3-1 victory against Marumo Gallants, and it was the Portuguese mentor shedding some light on his team talk at the break.
And they said, no, we are playing good. I said, yes, you are playing good. So if you have these emotions, you have that feeling that you are playing good, just please continue to play as you are playing. Try to don't lose yourself in the emotions that can come from a result that is not fair in the moment. So I think they understood the message. They started very strong. I also told them we just need to score one goal, because if we score one, we'll win the match. And it happened. We scored one. Anyway, after the first goal, the team lost a little bit the capacity to focus on the right behaviors. And also because of that, we had one or two situations that were not very, very easy to cope with in terms of defense. But then we insisted, and I think the outcome of the game is more than fair. We made a wonderful game today.
That's Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso on the morning brief. Now, Sekhukhune United, they ran out 4-2 winners against AmaZulu at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium last night. Elsewhere, Kylian Mbappe was the star for Real Madrid as his superb hat-trick inspired a 3-1 victory over Manchester City in the second leg of their Champions League knockout playoff, sealing a 6-3 win on aggregate. Here's Real Madrid boss Carlo Ancelotti.
We are in the fight for the Champions League because, as I said, to be honest, we have a fantastic quality in front. Had difficulty to find a good balance defensively. It seems that we found this balance, and so we have possibility to compete until the end in this competition.
In the meantime, Borussia Dortmund clinched their spot in the Champions League last 16 after a goalless draw against Sporting in the second leg. The return leg was just a formality for the German side, who posted a 3-0 victory in Lisbon. Now, Mohamed Salah scored one goal and set up the equaliser by Trent Alexander-Arnold in Liverpool's 2-2 draw at Aston Villa that stretched its lead in the Premier League to 8 points. Cricket. New Zealand underlined their title aspirations with a 60-run victory against the defending champions Pakistan in Group A of the Champions Trophy at the National Stadium. Will Young struck 107. Tom Latham smashed an unbeaten 118, helping New Zealand overcome a sluggish start and post 320 for 5. Pakistan were all out for 260 in 47.2 overs. And finally, tennis. Elena Rybakina saved 6 match points before closing out a victory against Paula Badosa to reach the quarterfinals of the Dubai Tennis Championship, while the world number 1 Arina Sabalenka fell to a surprise defeat to Clara Tauson. More sport on the morning brief. Top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauleng Lechela. Ndauleng, good morning to you. Your mic is on, so from this moment, no hot mic moves. Careful what you say. The Fed minutes are out, and they reveal policymakers being concerned about tariffs. Donald Trump won't like that very much, right? He loves tariffs.
He really does. I mean, him slapping another set of tariffs just yesterday. But I guess we had, troubles of our own. So we weren't too concerned about that. So the minutes confirm that policymakers have been assessing the impact of President Trump's tariffs on inflation, as they could lead to higher prices for consumers. Now, the president has already imposed some tariffs and has threatened to expand them, including the recently announced 25% duty on autos, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. Now, the minutes are from the January meeting where policymakers kept rates unchanged after 3 consecutive cuts last year. These minutes revealed that the Fed won't be making any further adjustments until they see inflation move closer to the 2% target. Now, despite the inflationary concerns, Fed officials are optimistic about the economic outlook, thanks to expectations of eased government regulations and tax policy changes. But they are taking a wait-and-see approach, assessing inflation trends before making any further moves. The current benchmark overnight borrowing rate is targeted between 4.25 to 4.5%, and markets are pricing in the next cut in perhaps July or September.
In company news, Ndauleng, tell me about Glencore reporting a loss. You're saying this comes amid coal prices that are declining.
That's right. So the miners slipping into the red, reporting an annual loss of $2.8 billion. The group citing declining thermal coal prices and operational impairments as major contributors. Now, Glencore's coal operations in South Africa were impacted by low prices and export logistics challenges, resulting in a 5% decline in overall coal exports. The average benchmark price for thermal coal fell by 13 to 22% last year, affecting Glencore's revenue and earnings. Now, despite efforts to adapt to the challenging market conditions, Glencore's thermal and steel-making coal operations, which accounted for over a third of its revenue, were hard hit, and the company was forced to impair its South African coal operations by $611 million due to the lower price outlook and those logistics challenges. Additionally, declining metal prices, including nickel and cobalt, which fell by 22 and 27% respectively, further worsened the challenges faced by Glencore. Looking ahead, the group expects a steady growth of 4% per annum in copper equivalent production up to 2028, driven by its acquisition of EVR and its existing portfolio of assets. The company also anticipates receiving $1 billion in cash and 32.8 million shares in the combined group as part of the merger between US and Canadian agribusiness bunch and Viterra.
Yeah, so Ntauling, it was a day of high drama in Parliament as far as our budget is concerned. I can't imagine that was not mirrored in the markets yesterday.
That's right. Sentiment really sour here at home, Thulas, with markets taking a hit after Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana pushed back the budget at the 11th hour. With that, we saw the all-share shedding 0.8%. The rand, in the meantime, also caught up in the fallout that was induced by the postponement of the budget. At one point yesterday, it shed about 1%, but it's also important to note that it regained some of that strength throughout the day, from lows of about 18.58 to about 18.53 against the dollar this hour. Moving over to international markets in the US, stocks closed higher yesterday, and this despite President Trump's latest tariff moves. Investors on that front also sifting through the Fed minutes for insight into future policy moves. With that, we saw the S&P 500, the biggest gainer on that front, closing 0.24% higher. And then over in Asia, it's red screens as concerns about the potential impact of higher tariffs to be imposed by the US on partner nations continued to weigh on sentiment this morning.
All right, Ntauling, thank you for that first update. That's Ntauling Lechela there. She'll be back with a second update just after 7:30 here on The Morning Brief.
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan, only when financed through Ford Credit. 10% deposit, prime less 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. Ford Credit is a registered credit provider and an authorized financial services provider. T&Cs apply.
The giants of French rugby, Bordeaux Baclair and Clermont Auvergne, are fighting for a massive victory to cement top 5 positions. This is the top 14. Rugby the French way. Catch the huge contest between Bordeaux Union Baclair and Clermont Auvergne on Sunday, 23 February at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag The Morning Brief.
17 minutes to 7. The postponement of the budget speech yesterday came as a result of disagreements within the Government of National Unity about a proposed VAT increase. The Democratic Alliance was quick to take credit for it, saying the postponement was as a result of the party's opposition to the proposed VAT increase, which would have been pegged at 2%, taking our VAT rate to 17%. But the DA's version, as you will have heard in the last 24 hours, hours has been widely contested by other parties that form part of the multi-party coalition, who insist that the postponement was as a result of not just the DA's opposition to the proposed VAT increase, but that of other parties and even ANC ministers as well. So let's speak to John Steenhuisen, who is the leader of the Democratic Alliance this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Steenhuisen, and thank you for your time. Unprecedented is the key word that people use, uncharted terrain. Where does this leave us as South Africa in terms of our governance? We need the budget to be approved by Parliament in order for us to continue to meet the daily obligations of government. But as things stand right now, many people are feeling uncertain.
Well, I don't think that people should feel uncertain. I think we are in unprecedented territory, and that's because for the first time in 30 years, you have a government in place now that's made up of more than one party. And in that situation, there requires to be negotiation and backwards and forwardsing on what the priority should be and how people should be brought along in a process like that. So yes, it is unprecedented, but there's no pressure to pass the budget this week. There's plenty of time left for us to do it, and I think that the Minister of Finance and the Government of National Unity have done the responsible thing by withdrawing a budget that would have had very deep consequences for the people of South Africa, given the current cost of living crisis, and to go back to the drawing board and come back with a budget that speaks to the medium-term development plan goals of economic growth, job creation, and dealing with the high cost of living. And I think that's a far more responsible way to proceed than simply tabling a budget which had the potential to do significant damage to the socio-economic and political environment in South Africa. And I think that people should welcome the fact that there is now a multi-party government with a multiplicity of voices around the table.
So the budgeting is a process that, in my understanding at least, takes several months, a good chunk of the year, with various consultations and various departments chipping in and weighing in and various other processes. Then it goes to cabinet. A key question that many South Africans have been asking is, how did it even, get to that point that it was only the call was made at the 11th hour. All the other preps had gone into it with the assumption that, you don't get to that stage without cabinet having approved. So how did you find yourselves as a government, as cabinet, finding out about this at the 11th hour? Or did you find out about it much earlier than that?
No, we didn't find out about the VAT increase much earlier. We only found about the VAT increase in the last fortnight. But
in the last fortnight?
In the last fortnight,
yes.
There was very, very clearly presentations done to Cabinet on the budget. And then 2 weeks ago, a presentation was brought at a special Cabinet meeting in which the impact of the court ruling on the social development, the SRD grant, that had lifted that up, was presented, and what was then at that late stage a projection of under collection in terms of taxes, and that obviously that then had to be filled. Subsequent to that, there was a learning of about a week and a half ago about a VAT increase, and that was in meetings with various political parties, and we've been very clear from the beginning that we rejected it, and it came down to the point yesterday where this budget was either going to be tabled or not. There was broad disagreement around whether it should proceed. And we made it very clear that we would not vote for a budget that had a 2% VAT increase in it. And there was no ways we would be able to, A, get away with that with the electorate, and B, nor would we want to, because it would cause significant inflationary pressures and put even further burdens on already burdened citizens, as well as having a terrible effect on poor and middle class South Africans.
So you've been criticized by many of the other parties that serve with you in the multi-party coalition government as the DA, that you are seeking to take credit for having quote unquote blocked the 2% VAT increase. Why are you doing that when the narrative and account from many other parties is that the disagreement came from many fronts, including by ministers who have been appointed from the ANC?
I don't contest that, but what I am contesting is the fact that it would frankly have not been able to pass the budget without the DA's votes. That is the reality. Other parties could have said what they wanted to say, but the budget could have proceeded because there would have been the numbers in the National Assembly to pass it. There are no numbers to pass it without the DA, as the party with 22% and a party which makes up the broader part of the majority outside of the ANC in Parliament. And I think it was the backstop of that budget not potentially passing that one would have seen as the deterrent for just simply proceeding and tabling that budget. And so, yes, that's absolutely right. But I don't think we need to be fighting over who takes the credit, because the winners here have been the people of South Africa.
Well, you'll understand. I mean, it came from your own statements. I'm looking at a poster here that you issued out. Budget postponed due to DA's opposition to ANC's VAT increase. It has a feel to it that says you want to take credit. You want to take credit for an action that will put you in good light with the voters. So in a way, these parties are saying you are playing politics.
We're a political party. It'd be very odd if a political party didn't play politics, wouldn't you think? And it doesn't say only the DA there. It says due to the DA.
Sure.
Just as it may be due to others.
I hear you.
So I don't think that's a particularly fair accusation to make.
Gotcha. Mr. Steenhuisen, so what path do we take now? There were three paths that were carved out. One was the VAT, was tax increases, because you did say there's a revenue gap. Our priorities need money, they need to be funded. So the one path was we increase taxes, possibly VAT as well. The other path is we borrow. We owe quite a lot of people a lot of money. And the third pathway is we continue on this budget cuts that are already hitting ordinary South Africans. So going forward, what path are we choosing?
Well, let me just say very clearly, I think it was the responsible thing for a government to do what was done yesterday, contrary to what some of the opposition are saying. But let me just say what's missing there from the analysis is growth. Where's the big, bold plan to create growth? The medium-term development plan has, and the president announced it in the SONA, wants to grow about 3% at the end of the medium-term process. Where is that plan to get there? How do you put a budget on the table that then only speaks to 1.9% as a maximum of growth? And so if you look at other countries in the emerging market bracket, South Africa, countries like Argentina, they're doing some pretty bold things in those countries to stimulate the economy and to take inflation down. I think now is the opportunity, given the economic situation that we're in, to make those bold decisions. Why can't we announce the concessioning of the Cape Town port so that we can grow agriculture output, for instance? Why can't we?
Sure, but the results there are a bit long-term, Mr. Steenhuisen, and I don't think anyone will argue with you. You need to fund the budget now. The priorities now. The 800 doctors or so that need to be appointed now. NSFAS needs to be funded now. The schools, the teachers need to be appointed now and paid for.
Yes, of course. And so what you do in the short term is focus on what you can do to cut where there's still fat. And we've given 10 key areas where we believe that cuts could be made to ensure that, including the 1.8 billion rand that's been put aside next year in this budget for the DRC deployment, expanding to 3 to 5 billion rand over the medium term. This is a clear area where we can cut.
All right.
There's also, we have to focus on economic growth. We've got a growth problem in South Africa, and that's what we've got to focus on. So you've got to cut. You've got to make sure that you're not affecting frontline services, and you've got to raise revenue. How do you raise revenue? By growth, economic growth, more taxes.
Lastly, and very quickly, just to ask you about something that I raised about a day or so ago. I saw your briefing in response to Sake Liche, and your, you had been accused of being the new BBBE czar. I wouldn't take it that far, but certainly your language in speaking about the constitutional imperative to have some kind of advancement for people affected by historical patterns of discrimination was much stronger than I've heard you talk about it before. Are you now a new convert to BBBE?
Not at all. And I think if you have a look at the DA's economic justice policy, which I extensively quoted from in that press conference, this has always been the DA's policy. We don't believe in the trickle-down elite transfer that has left so many people behind, but we do believe fundamentally in creating an equality of opportunity, and it's very set out very clearly in our economic justice policy that we've got to overcome the past. We've got to deal with inequality in South Africa, but you do that by bringing everybody to the same starting point, then allowing there to be a fair race to take place. And that's why the levy income and the work being done by those commodity bodies is at farm level. It's assisting small-scale black farmers to compete fairly in a race, and then the market chooses the winners and losers, not the government. It's also not top down, it's bottom up, and it's controlled by the sectors themselves. It's not controlled by some government apparatchik putting cronies in.
Got to thank you for your time this
absolutely
morning.
Support that.
Thank you for that. That's John Steenhuisen, who is the Agriculture Minister as well as the leader of the Democratic Alliance.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Morning, still raining across Gauteng. It is day 4 of wet weather conditions, and where it is wet, it is raining reasonably hard, and it's just generally overcast and poor sort of driving, so make sure you've got plenty of time to get through safely. We're looking at a crash on the N3 north at Van Buren. Big traffic out of Alberton and Germiston this morning. Also 2 crashes on the Mopari Highway, one at XX, a taxi flying off the highway there, so coming out of Shoshingu, it's heavy. Then another crash involving a bus at the bottom of the Mopari Highway going on to Eskia and Pathlali. Centurion, a lot of closures still around the Henops River, particularly and Rabi and John Foster. So you've got a sort of a loop around situation again, causing delays. Pretty significant flooding. Amanzamtoti, CBD, Isipingo Beach, Prospect in areas as well underwater. A lot of water on the N2 between Amanzamtoti and Prospect. And so just drive carefully. A bit of flooding still with us on the M4 Southern Freeway inbound. A lot of rain across that Durban region overnight, and it's inevitable you will hit some flooding on wet road surfaces. Cape Town, N2 inbound, passing Khayelitsha heavy, Baden-Powell to the airport runway, and then a crash just past Jan Smuts Drive, backlogging traffic on that section of the N2 coming in from Robert Sebukwe. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
The KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health says there are now 168 confirmed cases of hand, foot and mouth disease across the province. The department says the outbreak is mostly affecting children in primary schools and daycare centers. Let's speak now to Babongile Mhlongo, who is the Director of Environmental Health, Communicable Disease Control and Malaria Control in the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Let's start with a point of clarity. What is hand, foot and mouth disease, and how does it differ from foot and mouth disease that we see in cattle, for example?
Good morning to us and the listeners. Hand, foot and mouth disease is a common viral infection that affects mainly infants and children. It's totally different from the foot and mouth that we normally see on the livestock. The foot and mouth that we see in the livestock, it's not a zoonotic disease, meaning that it cannot be transmitted from animals to humans. As well as the hand, foot and mouth disease, it's not zoonotic as well. So it means we cannot transmit to animals.
All right. So how concerned should we be about its spread in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment?
We are seeing more districts reporting cases, but as we've been saying, the disease is a bit mild. It's just that what has been observed and what differs from the other influenza or flu, it's the blisters that would then be like around the mouth and also around the tongue, on the palms and on the soles of the feet, which makes a bit difficult, especially for the little children, to eat and also to hold and to walk. Otherwise, it's not a mild disease. It clears within 7 to 10 days.
You said it's not a mild disease. Did you mean to say it is a mild disease?
It is a mild disease. Yes, it is a mild disease.
So tell me about how parents, is there a cure? Let me start there. Is there a cure, or do we have a vaccine against it? Is it not part of the basket of vaccinations that children receive at an early age?
No, it doesn't have a vaccine, but what we do, we normally treat the symptoms. Like if a child has a flu-like symptoms, you manage the flu. If there are blisters, you manage the blisters. So there's no specific treatment for it. You just manage the symptoms that a child will be presenting with.
Yeah. So what is the best advice from you as a department about how we break the cycle of infections?
We have been saying we should, those children that are actually presenting with symptoms, we should keep them at home for 3 to 5 days. And we're saying in schools, they should make sure that hands are washed regular, the surfaces are cleaned, and where, like in the early childhood development centers, they should try and avoid having kids sharing the toys, because that can be another mode of transmission.
And what are the conditions that, and perhaps seasonal or environmental, etc., that you can talk to that have made it to be something that's spreading in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment? And importantly, are you worried that it will continue to spread to more districts and possibly beyond the borders, the boundaries of KwaZulu-Natal?
For instance, in terms of the environmental conditions, this disease is normally common around the summer and autumn season. So we have seen it before. It's not the first time. It's just that what's new this time around is the number of clusters that we're having. Yes, we are seeing more districts reporting cases, and the possibility of the disease going to other provinces, it's there because it's a viral infection and it's very contagious.
All right. I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Babongile Mhlongo, who is the Director of Environmental Health, Communicable Disease Control and Malaria Control in the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health. Brings us to 7 a.m. Let's check in with Ondela Mbana with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
Thank you, Tulas. Top stories at 7. Government to engage parties on the planned VAT hike, and Wits hunger strike over exclusion continues. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good morning. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says if the government does not implement the 2 percentage point increase in value-added tax, it will be forced to seek another source of raising the money. Increasing public sector wage funding and meeting spending pressure are some of the key motivation for the hike. National Treasury had planned to propose the increase from 15% to 17%. Godongwana says that there will be negotiations with the various political parties in the government of national unity to manage the political risk of the proposed VAT increase. He addressed the media in Parliament yesterday.
This is the government of national unity. We must live with the reality that people may even go to the set of negotiating items. The bill allows them to do that. That set of discussion may impact on the actual budget as it stands, and it's not going to be like business as usual, where we would go in and be assured that of what we've tabled will be the final outcome. So I don't want to get into the numbers game and so on. I'm working on the assumption that there's going to be a thorough negotiation with the different parties.
Meanwhile, many ordinary South Africans have reacted with shock to the postponement of the budget speech. These residents from Kimberley in the Northern Cape say it has serious implications.
It's very frustrating for our country. What a setback. These old people and these new generations have already planned for the year, and now suddenly everything has been stopped. For what? It's very sad for our country. We'll keep on going back each and every year.
Our budget has been postponed for the first time in history. Our economy, our markets are going to be like a seesaw for the next week or 2 months before it recovers.
Terrible. How can we have a new government now in, and now already there's infighting. Already we're having so much fractionality. Honestly, we should be moving forward together as people. New umbrella, but we're not moving forward.
Wits University students that are on hunger strike have made an impassioned plea to the institution's management to allow them to register despite their historic debt. The students who are protesting against financial exclusion have been camping at the Student Representative Council's boardroom since last Friday. The university requires students to have a debt of less than 10,000 Rand or pay 50% of what they owe. Sivuya Mafuna is one of the striking students.
Now we're saying we will die in front of this school. We will die in front of management. We will die in front of Ziplon, the VC, so that he's satisfied that he has achieved his goal of purging the black African poor child and to be satisfied that we have died. Not die in the village, in the township, where you cannot see us.
Thousands of residents of rural areas and townships in Ladysmith, KwaZulu-Natal say access to water remains beyond their reach. Some of them get water from streams and rivers alongside their livestock. They say they have been without water for more than 60 years. Shisepi Shabalala is one of the affected residents.
We have a big problem here. We don't have water. We share water from the stream with livestock that you see us chasing away because they make the water dirty. With our water challenges, we appeal for help. Even when we have funerals, we use this water. I'm 63 years old, now drinking this water. All the children here, they grew up using this water.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reiterated his view that the overall cooperation with the U.S. is crucial for his country. This after European leaders reacted sharply to U.S. President Donald Trump's denunciation of Zelensky. Trump described Zelensky as a dictator and blamed him for Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, Zelensky says he's counting on the support of various countries and Ukrainians.
I count on Ukrainian unity, on our Ukrainian courage, on our relations with partners, on the unity of Europe, and on the pragmatism of America.
Recapping the top story, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says if the government does not implement the 2 percentage point increase in value-added tax, it will be forced to seek another source of raising the money. I am on Delambana for SAFM News Headlines at 7:30.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
February could be the month to celebrate love and savings on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you win. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Rain for day 4 across Gauteng, so take it very easy, please, on those wet and slippery roads. Plenty of traffic on the N1. Brockfontein down to New Road is the extent of the queue already. Fallen trees across Pretoria. Atterbury Road inbound towards Alsatian by Pick and Pay is a big backlog into a big fallen tree. Montpellier Highway is a crash at XX, so delays leaving Shoshanguve territory this morning. Durban, a lot of surface water and flooding all over the show. A lot of rain last night. There's some queues on the M4 coming inbound towards the M7. So Jacobs Clarewood looking a bit busy. Heavy pressure because of flooding between Amanzamtoti and the old airport. There are pockets of flooding all over that into really extreme flooding through Amanzamtoti CBD and particularly bad around Isipingo Beach and the Prospecton side of the N2. There's a lot of localised flooding and a lot of delays out that way. Cape Town, N2 inbound starting to ease but still busy passing Khayelitsha backlogs from Spine Road through to the R300 and the N7 both ways jamming up quite heavily between France Conradi and Fort Trekker Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, soccer action, Sekhukhune United 4-2 winners against AmaZulu at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium. And tennis action, the top seed Carlos Alcaraz had to dig deep to overcome Luca Nardi at the Qatar Open in Doha. All these stories and more around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 7 on this Thursday. It's good to be in your company. We're into the second hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Here's what's coming up. In the next few minutes, I'll be in conversation with my colleague, the SABC News economics editor, Tsepo Mongwai, who was watching it very closely, enjoyed front row seats to the drama that unfolded around the budget that wasn't the budget that was meant to be delivered yesterday. In fact, I don't even know if Tsepo continues to be under an embargo pending, the start of the delivery of the budget, or is he free from that embargo that's always in place just ahead of the start of the budget speech? So he will tell us a bit more and give us a rundown of how it all unfolded yesterday. Then at the same time, we'll get you some analysis with Professor Raymond Parsons, who will tell us a bit more about the implications of the budget being postponed, and also in terms of getting our finances, public finances, right. We'll also tease out the story around the tax proposals, because at the heart of why the budget wasn't passed yesterday, the speech wasn't delivered yesterday, has been this contention within the multi-party coalition, the Government of National Unity, around what would have been a proposed 2% increase in VAT. We'll talk to Professor Keith Engel, who is the Deputy CEO of the South African Institute of Tax. All of that is coming up within this next half hour. So let's get cracking then with it. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Thursday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
So as I said, let's get cracking with it. The Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, has announced that government will table a revised budget on the 12th of March 2025 after the scheduled budget speech was unexpectedly cancelled at the 11th hour yesterday. So the delay follows disagreements within the Government of National Unity over key budget proposals, particularly over a proposed hike in value-added tax. Let's take the first take of the story with Tsepo Mongwai, who is the SABC's economics editor. Good morning to you, Tsepo. You watched it very closely. You were within the various rooms within the precincts of Parliament. Tell me, for starters, do you continue to be under an embargo in terms of being able to report what was shared with you in that budget lockup pending the start of the speech?
Well, good morning to you, Tulas, and to you listeners. Well, the embargoes has since been lifted, so we are free to discuss the content of the budget proposals. Although, it's quite unusual because you don't know how much weight those proposals are going to carry.
Absolutely.
And if there will be any difference come the 12th of March. But I think the overall theme and thinking will probably continue because the budget actually highlights some of the fiscal constraints that continue to some extent worsen compared to what we have seen in the medium-term budget policy statement. Our finances are not in a quite a good shape, I must say.
When was the first sign for you, Tsepo, that things weren't quite right? You've done the budget for, a very, very long time. And there have been occasions where I was part of the team that was there in Parliament as well. You sort of know the routine. When did you start getting a sense that things are not quite what they should be?
What happened is usually during what is called a lockup, that's a group of journalists and economists will be in a room where they're not supposed to communicate because remember, budget it's a market sensitive document. So if you you have some other motives, you could actually use that information to gain, especially if you are a trader or an investor, you could actually position yourself in the market. So to avoid that, you are not allowed to communicate with the outside world until the finance minister starts speaking. So during that, we usually have around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the minister will come around and he will brief us about, and we will get an opportunity to ask questions about the budget. Now, what happened yesterday is that happened a little bit earlier. And when we ask why is this media briefing now taking place just around 9 o'clock, and the minister's explanation was that, I had not consulted my cabinet colleague. Usually when I come here, I would have consulted them. but I need time to go and consult them. So we're like, okay, so this document is done, the budget is done, but you have not consulted your colleagues. And then, of course, it was quite unusual for us. But they also highlighted something for us that was quite telling, that, look, this is the GNU, because at that time, when the media briefing started, the deputy minister was not there. Ashok Subraman was not there, so he, there was some kind of assumptions that perhaps, why is he not there? Is it because, maybe, the DA is not happy with this, they would not allow him to come? But later on, he arrived and he said that he wasn't aware that the media briefing has been moved to an earlier time. And of course, it made sense. And then he joined, although he didn't say much during the media briefing. We went back to the media lockup. We've got the speech, and for us, the moment you receive the speech, you know that the whole budget is done. So this is the speech that the minister is going to deliver. So we align our work in terms of what is called the news package that we put together. We align them to the content of the speech, because we would have received the so-called budget review, which gives us the more detailed information about it. And we got our phones just before 2:00, and we're able to communicate with the outside world. But of course, we're still under that embargo, so we could not talk about the budget. But then, we saw tweets that, well, the budget, is not going to happen. And at that time, I think in the National Assembly, discussions were starting that it looks like the budget is not going to happen. So we asked the Treasury for clarity, and they were not forthcoming at that time.
Tsepo, the key questions you have in your mind and from your experience, are you finding that they're being answered, particularly in terms of the tension within the government and other institutions? And I am, in a way, asking you about that awkward moment of gossip, if you can call it that, or banter or whatever chatter that the finance minister and the minister and the presidency, as well as the DG National Treasury, were somehow not aware was still live with the cameras. What does that reveal about the tensions within the various institutions, involving, as it does, the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kisweta?
I think number one, Thulas, is the fact that there is some kind of power that National Treasury enjoys in government. And I think that dates back for many years, even before the GNU. National Treasury is able to unilaterally decide on what goes in the budget and what doesn't go in the budget, whether certain ministers, whether they're from ANC or not ANC, they like it or not, or irrespective of their preferences. National Treasury has the ultimate decision with the Minister of Finance, and to some extent with the President, to decide on what eventually becomes our budget. Now, of course, this has not gone down very well with ministers, even before, because they always raise concern that why would they have such allocation? They make requests during budget process in terms of their spending priorities and areas where they think there should be more allocations, but what they get is different. But also is the consultation process. The way the budget is done, it's more of, let's hear what you're going to say, but at the end of it, we are going to decide what eventually becomes the outcome of the budget. And then one of the reasons the minister spoke about is that the reason why they cannot openly discuss the budget within cabinet, it's because of the market sensitivity. Information, it's quite sensitive. So they are very, very careful in terms of what they share. They give hints of what will be the outcome of the budget. So I must say, consultation happens very, very close in terms of being open and transparent. Is probably on the day that the budget is being presented.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your insights. That's Tsepo Mongwai there, the SABC News economics editor, taking you ringside, as it were, to use a boxing analogy, taking you ringside to the drama that unfolded in Parliament around our budget. So let's continue with this conversation. Let's speak to Raymond Parsons, who is an economist at the Northwest University's Business School. Prof, good morning, and thank you for your time. What did you make of it all? The adjectives being used: uncharted terrain, unprecedented, extraordinary. What does the moment for you represent? Close quarter accountability within the national executive itself, or a sign of trouble that the centre is perhaps not holding?
Well, good morning to you and to the listeners. I think obviously it is a decision which for South Africa to postpone the budget by a few weeks is an unprecedented one for this country. But having said that, I would say that the most important message for all the decision makers, whether in the public or the private sector, is this has been a steep learning curve for everyone as to how this ought to be done in future. So I think we must retain perspective here. It's not a crisis. This extra time could well mean an amended budget in 2 or 3 weeks' time, which, if I understand the actual dynamics correctly, might better meet the goals which have been set by the GNU's medium-term development plan for growth and job creation. And there obviously were some doubts as to whether in its present format, this particular budget speech indeed was going to meet those goals. And to the extent that we know what was in the speech that was not delivered, to which reference has been made, if you read it quickly, I think the first half of it says things that we would all applaud are the challenges, the constraints. I think it comes to the second half, which says, well, given that, this is how we should finance it. And obviously the burden falling on the VAT issue. So I think what we're really seeing, what has caught up with us now, and which we have to deal with both in the short term and the long term, is that the years of growth in South Africa being too low for too long has shrunk the tax base to the point where when you're drawing up a budget, you now have very limited options. As the Minister of Finance said, if you want to cut government spending, there are consequences. If you want to borrow more, there are consequences. And if you want to tax, there are consequences. But we've got to get that balance right in terms of the medium-term development plan. And that's going to be the challenge on the learning curve and the rules of engagement of the GNU between now and the 12th of March, so that we can come forward with a consensus budget that, while it may not satisfy everyone, will at least get sufficient consensus as to what the budget should look like.
Sufficient consensus. That's the key word in the government of national unity. Let me ask you, Prof, in the United States, and I suppose the closest parallels that can be drawn, when there's no agreement within Congress to pass the various appropriation bills, 12 of them, you end up with, a partial government shutdown, in that the funding for the next financial year is not passed, and therefore agencies start shutting down. Is there a concept or the possibility of something similar, something that people would call a fiscal cliff within South Africa?
No, I think that the next few weeks is going to be a very good test of the maturity of the GNU to avoid that kind of situation in South Africa. But I'm glad that you've mentioned the US Congress, because although there is understandably a preoccupation here about the contents of the budgets being market sensitive, you must just recall that in the United States, the whole budget process is open in Congress. You don't have any secretive sort of proposals. It's all debated out in public, and the markets monitor it as it goes along. All right, we may have a different political system, but I think as far as possible, what the learning curve is telling us, that there does need to be more effective consultation, particularly among the higher decision makers, because we are into a new ball game called the Government of National Unity. And it means that the rules of engagement must be so shaped that this kind of situation is avoided, and that by the 12th of March, we'll have all found ourselves on more or less the same page as to what the budget strategy ought to be, so that we get the growth and the job creation that we want in the short and the medium term.
As a parting shot then, Prof, I want to ask you something that I asked of the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, in my conversation with him in the last hour. I said to him, the proposition I made was that from that speech, we'll learn that there are three paths that we can take. The first one, taxes. Raise taxes, including the possibility of a VAT increase. The second, we borrow. We already owe so much and spend so much servicing debt and the cost thereof. And the third one is we continue on the path of budget cuts and cutting even those services that people need on a daily basis. He then proposed that there's an option that says grow the economy so that your tax base grows. I then pushed back and said to him, well, that's in the long term. That will help us in the long term, not in the immediate term, and the emergencies are happening now. Was I incorrect in my reading that, yes, the solution is better economic growth so that you have a better tax base, but perhaps you need more immediate interventions?
Well, yes, that is. You have to balance out the short term with the long term solutions, both in the budget and what lies beyond the budget and what lies in the hands of other ministers. We cannot put all responsibility on the shoulders of the National Treasury. There are other members of the GNU who have to step up to the plate and implement not only what was in the SONA, but what will be in the budget. So the important point is to do nothing in the short term that jeopardizes your ability to do in the medium term in terms of your own commitment now, in terms of the medium-term development plan. That must be the framework against which the changed or the amended budget must fit when it is announced on the 12th of March.
All right, thank you for your time this morning. That's Professor Raymond Parsons. He's an economist at the Northwest University's Business School. Listening to that is Professor Keith Engel, who is CEO of the South African Institute of Taxation. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time. So at the heart of this dispute, at the heart of the drama that unfolded, was a proposal that would have been tabled by the Finance Minister to increase VAT by 2%. The increases in VAT have been few and far in between, right? Why would that have been a particularly bad idea in the eyes of many?
Well, I think the VAT is the one tax that affects everybody. So even if you're not making income and you're unemployed, the prices of all your goods go up. So we all feel it. The only people who feel it less are those who are the wealthy and the super wealthy. But the bulk of this country is poor, middle poor, and working poor. And most of us don't have that much. So the VAT affects almost 98% of the population disproportionately. So that's why all the parties were opposed to it. But to be fair to Treasury, if they wanted to implement government's proposals, it was the only tax they could apply.
Sure, it was the only tax they could apply. Why not personal income tax, corporate tax? Why are those not options in terms of raising those a bit more?
Well, they did raise them because they were not giving inflationary relief. They could do it, but it isn't enough money. The problem is they need a lot more money fast if you were going to enact the ANC agenda. And if you're going to have an ANC agenda, the VAT was the only thing they can do. The question really is what you're hearing from the other parties is they don't really believe in the ANC agenda, and therefore a VAT increase of that kind was not necessary.
So just give me a history and background. I mean, I read somewhere that VAT in this country was first introduced, was it 1991? And what do we read in terms of the steady nature and approach to VAT increases? At that point, if I'm correct in my recollection, it was at 10%. So it has only grown by 5% in that period.
Well, I guess the question is, why do you believe the tax rate should always grow? So in the early 90s, it went up to by 5%. Then again, we had somewhere in 2018, I believe, we had another 1% from 14 to 15. And then, so it went from 10 to 14 to 15. Remember, at that time, this was the Zuma era. And they increased it only out of desperation. And now here we are with another 2%. Now, again, there's this view, well, a lot of Europeans tax it at a 20% rate. Well, the problem is Europe is one of the most heavily taxed set of countries in the world. But there you get services. And if you took a look at Europe, with this kind of tax and spend policy, they're not getting any growth. They're getting a period of completely anemic growth. Do we really want to follow that policy? But I believe that, is that where we want to be? We want to have European taxes with weak services? It doesn't make sense. So it's not just comparing, there's not some natural limit. Think about it. We're moving toward a point where some European countries have a 20% VAT. Now that's like a huge up amount for every purchase you make. 17 is getting close. And the one fear that I think everybody has is you're going to take a 2% to 17, and then 2-3 years later it's going to be 19, and then another 2-3 years later it's going to be 20. So the signal is we're going to keep taxing our way out. And I think it's more of an emotional issue. In that direction, I think people have had enough.
All right. Thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Professor Keith Engelt, who is the CEO of the South African Institute of Taxation.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
I'm in tourism. I'm running a guest house here. When I switched over to OUTsurance, it was very simple and convenient. I used the savings to subsidize my solar installations. Switching to OUTsurance was one of the best decisions I made insurance-wise, yes.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover. Or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer FSP. T's and C's online.
The giants of French rugby, Botopetle and Clement Avogny, are fighting for a massive victory to cement top 5 positions. This is the top 14. Rugby the French way. Catch the huge contest between Bodo Union Petle and Clement Avogny on Sunday, 23 February at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Thank you, Thulas. In the news headlines, COSATU says it had warned government that the ANC's proposed 2 percentage points increase in value-added tax would negatively affect workers. The Cape Winelands District Municipality says a fire at the Beinskloof Pass near Wellington in the Barland is still burning out of control, and the Trump administration has ordered an end to congestion charges in New York. The order is the administration's latest rollback of former U.S. Joe Biden-era environmental policies. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very busy Thursday coming in from Pretoria to Joburg. A crash on the M1 South out of Beclu. Now that's causing a delay right back to Brockfontein interchange and looking very heavy. There's big delays on the N3 running north up into Galulis. That's an earlier crash on the side of the highway by Van Buren. Other side of town, a crash on the M1 North near Main Reef Road Bridge coming out of Soweto. Heavy backlogs there. And then a breakdown further up on the M1 before William Mandela, slowing traffic through that Randburg area. Pretoria this morning, fallen tree. Pretoria East Atterbury Road near Pick and Pay. That's coming through to Alsatian Road Junction, so that's all heavily backed up. Durban, a disaster in terms of flooding and surface water. If roads aren't flooded, they are certainly wet and slippery. Big rains overnight last night. Really significant flooding around Isipingo Beach and Prospect, and so local routes are blocked with flood water. Others are heavily congested, and flooding on the N2 between Amanzimtoti and Prospect, and causing a really big backlog of traffic all the way up to the old airport area. Once you get through that, there's a crash on the N2 at Spaghetti Junction causing a secondary delay, and a crash on the M4 Southern Freeway inbound at Clarewood causing some delays up from Jacobside this morning. Cape Town, little collision on the R300 going north up by Old Paarl Road. All lanes are open, but it's enough to cause a queue from the Delft area this morning, and the N7 remains heavy northbound passing Vangate Mall up to the M2 highway due to an earlier collision scene. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey, good morning to you once again, Zai. So it's been raining quite a bit here in What's with the 4, the margin of 4? What's happening there?
I know. All of them have had like 4. They're trying to tell us something, that this is the operative number. But I mean, what happened to this guy, Richard Ofori? His gloves just allow... Things were just... I think it was the rain. It was just slipping through.
Slippery.
Goal after goal.
Buttery.
Totally.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. Amassive, I think, is what Usutu should rebrand themselves. Definitely not the man of the match was Richard Ofori. He shipped 4 goals in that 4-2 loss to Sekhukhune United. Despite AmaZulu taking an early lead, Usutu saw Sekhukhune captain Linda Mtambo fire in 2 late goals to seal the deal. This loss means AmaZulu remain mid-table with defensive worries piling up ahead of their next game, which is against Magesi FC. All happening at Moses Mabhida Stadium on Saturday night. Now, Mamelodi Sundowns reminding everyone why they are the kings of the PSL, bouncing back from their shock loss to TS Galaxy with a dominant 3-1 win over Maruma Gallants. Now, we had Lucas Ribeiro Costa in his dazzling best, setting up a goal and scoring another. And we also saw that the match between Golden Arrows and Orlando Pirates called off due to a waterlogged pitch in Hammersdale. Stellenbosch FC coach Steve Barker says they are embracing the congested fixture list, unlike some of their rivals who've argued it's too many games. The side from the Winelands continue to play catch-up in the Betway Premiership due to their involvement in the CAF Confed Cup, where Stellies discover their quarter-final opponent later today. Barker says the only distraction is not having played an equal number of games with the team above them on the log.
What we're not used to is, as a team, is having played fewer games. So, you look at the log table and you're sort of not in the position where you want to be, but if you look, we've got 3 games in hand on a lot of the teams above us, of which 2 are, with all due respect, is a tough. We still got 2 against Magesi and 2 against Royal M to catch up. And we've got 3 home games on the trot now. So hopefully in 2-3 weeks' time we can re-look at the log and it'll be a lot better. So it's not nice looking at it and seeing you lying 9th, but you look, if you win this game in hand, but you've got to win those games. So it's been a bit of a challenge to look at the log table and see where we are, but I think we are slowly getting back on track with where we want to be, especially with the results that happened this evening.
Stellenbosch FC coach Steve Barker on the morning brief. Rugby now, coach Rassie Erasmus has invited 26 players, mainly overseas based, along with some talented youngsters and injured players, to the first virtual Springbok alignment camp of the year. That's on the 27th of March. This follows the in-person camp that was held from the 10th to the 12th in Cape Town. Erasmus and his coaching team will conduct 2 virtual sessions on that day, one for Japanese-based players and another for those in the Northern Hemisphere and domestically accommodating their time zones. Cricket, New Zealand had a 60-run victory against the defending champions and hosts Pakistan in Group A of the Champions Trophy. New Zealand posted a commanding 320 for 5 after being put into bat first. Pakistan all out for 260 in 47.2 overs. And tennis action, the top seed Carlos Alcaraz had to dig deep to overcome Luca Nardi at the Qatar Open in Doha, eventually beating the world number 85 in 3 sets. And in the women's tournament in Dubai, Elena Rybakina saving 6 match points, closing out victory against Paula Badosa to reach the quarterfinals at the Dubai Tennis Championship, where the world number 1, Aryna Sabalenka, she fell to a surprise defeat to the Dane, Clara Tauson. We'll be volley back with more sport, top of the hour on the Morning Brief. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. So the postponement of the budget yesterday, in the dramatic fashion in which it happened, being debated far and wide. Give me 2 takes. Let's start with the take of 91. You are saying this morning that they say that actually this is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And, quite an important voice in the investor realm, as 91 is South Africa's largest asset management firm. Now, in a Business Day article, the company's CEO, Hendrik du Toit, said the unprecedented postponement of the budget is nothing to worry about. Instead, he views it as a demonstration of democracy at work. Du Toit says the postponement, which occurred due to disagreements mainly over tax hikes, reflects the realities of coalition politics outbreaks and the government of national unity in action. He further emphasizes that South Africa needs to make trade-offs to achieve faster growth, requiring hard decisions on costs and aggressive growth-friendly policies. He praised the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana's decision to postpone the budget until March 12th, allowing sufficient time to reach consensus among GNU partners.
So the other take then that you're going to give us is from Business Unity South Africa. They are disappointed with the postponement.
That's right, not sharing the same sentiments as 91, saying Treasury's move to postpone the tabling of the 2025 budget is a cause of concern for South Africans, the business community, and the markets. The organization's CEO, Kulegani Mate, says the delay sends a negative message about the GNU's ability to collaborate effectively for the country's benefit and fulfill its crucial role in determining how national resources will be allocated. Mate further said it should have been apparent much earlier that the parties in the GNU were struggling to reach an agreement on the budget, and the postponement should have been announced sooner to avoid compromising the credibility of the National Treasury. While Busa has slammed the government for this move, it does note that this would have been the first budget under the GNU, and so it was expected that the compilation and the adoption processes would differ from those of the past. So some grace coming through.
Yeah, sure. What drama. And darling, in all of this playing itself out in the markets, give us a sense of how it played out in our local markets, but also just a sense of how things are looking elsewhere in the world.
That 11th hour postponement, of course, Thulas, just hitting markets, local markets that is, with the all share losing 0.8% by the close, fueled by an over 2% decline in the resources 10th complex. The rand steadily recovering, though yesterday morning before the budget, it hit highs of around 18.33. Post that budget delay, it dipped to 18.58, and now this morning it's sitting at 18.51 to the dollar. And then moving over to Asia, markets plunging into the red as a cautious stance from the Fed and Trump's latest tariff announcements weighed on sentiment. The Japanese Nikkei taking the biggest hits, down 1.5%, followed by the Hong Kong Hang Seng losing 1.3%. Over in Wall Street, the same kind of news just weighing on sentiment on that front. Futures are in the red, reversing yesterday's gains. As mentioned, those trade jitters seem to be spooking markets yet again.
All right, Ntauling, thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela there. She'll be back with one more update that will include a look forward to give you a sense of what kind of a Thursday we are in for in the markets. And that's coming up just after 8:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Raz Sipho Mantula. Sipho, good morning. Thank you. So the focus continues to be on the DRC, right? And this time around, they are looking elsewhere for military support and diplomatic support. They are looking to Chad.
Refresh morning, Thulas and Jump Africa to the listeners. Indeed, Thulas, what we saw yesterday is a special envoy from Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi, Didier Mazenge, who visited the president of Chad, Mahamat Idris Deby Jr., to convey the message of President Tshisekedi asking for Chad's military assistance in the ongoing fight against the M23 rebels. Nothing so far, Thulas, has been ruled out in terms of Chad supporting the DRC, because President Deby has already raised the issue of respecting of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Congo. We know it's not only Chad, Thulas, as well as Uganda. It is also assisting the DRC on dealing with the M23 as they are moving towards the South Kivu now, as we are looking at the role that the Sahel region will also be playing in the conflict in the Great Lakes.
You speak of the M23 moving and now in South Kivu, Bukavu, and they did say that they will go all the way to Kinshasa. Anxiety is growing in Kinshasa, you tell us this morning, with the result that some church leaders are pushing for peace talks.
That's quite true, Thulas. These two churches, the Protestant and the Catholic, are the biggest churches in the DRC. Now they've engaged with the East Africa Community Chairperson, President William Ruto, yesterday in Kenya, to raise the issue, what we might call the church-led diplomacy. If Thulas, militarily and political diplomacy has failed. Now we use what we call the soft power of religious diplomacy. They are planning to do a national dialogue, which will be led by prayer in Lubumbashi. They want to also push President Tshisekedi to engage with Colonel Nanga of the M23, because they are saying there is no need for President Tshisekedi to refuse to sit down with the rebels and engage on the crisis that is in the eastern DRC, because it will have a spilling effect, as you have said, that it will move to the capital city, Kinshasa.
Then in Uganda, Sipho, Kizza Besigye, concern continues to grow for his health and well-being. Tell me about his court appearance in a civilian court this time.
That was yesterday, and it did not go fully because the judge has to say that let this matter be reminded for some time, because he was not well also to follow what was happening yesterday in the court. Remember that he has been framed. I mean, they are saying that the issue of going under hunger strike in the maximum prison in Kampala has caused him not to even understand the current proceedings that are being held by the courts in Uganda. His wife, Thulas, has been saying that he has been framed, and he says that what he's going through, he's a captive, he has been kidnapped, and he's a captive, and all of the people in Uganda, including his family, are under captivity of President Museveni. This is a serious concern, Thulas, considering that the international world, as well as the East Africa community, is watching closely this case of the political opposition leader in Uganda, Kizza Besigye.
And you've got some sad news coming out of Bamako in Mali, the passing on of this pioneering African cinema giant with a career spanning, some 50 years?
Plus, he has passed at the age of 84. We are talking of the Malian filmmaker Suleiman Cisse, who was born in Mali, studied in Mali, Senegal, and Moscow. He was the president of the Union of Creators and Entrepreneurs of Cinema and Audiovisuals of West Africa. He has just recently called a press briefing to us, talking about the Festival of the Pan-African Film and Television in Ouagadougou, where he was going to be part of it. Now, the government has not announced what was the cause of death, but it is a sad moment for the Sahel region, losing what you can call a man who used the film to raise the issues of the continent, the deep humanism, and also political engagement in the Sahel. Some of the people, they say they are shocked with his passing, and we are talking about this elder, Suleiman Cisse, who passed at the age of 84.
Lastly, Sipho, in your historical archives, you're going all the way back to 20 February 1925. What happened on this day?
For our listeners in District 6 in Western Cape, they will remember this giant and this author, the writer, a leader of SACP, a leader of the then South African Colored People's Organization, defendant in the 1956 treason trial, a chief representative of the African National Congress in the Caribbean, who passed away on this day. It's almost a century now, 100 years since the passing of Justin Alexandra Alex Laguma. This is a prolific writer, Thulas, whose father was from Cuba, and he also went to Cuba in exile. That's where he was able to write many books and novels. And as we're talking about Cuba and Havana, Thulas, we know the crisis that is happening with the Minister of Arts and Culture having sent the writers to Cuba on papers of resistance. But here are the great writers, Thulas. 100 years ago, he passed on Alex Laguma. Asante sana Thulas, this was Sidilino Conversation, SAFM, observing the Black History Month.
That is Sipho Mantula there with your Africa Update, just giving you a sampling and a flavor of some of the stories and developments across the continent and its diaspora.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're in the private security industry, and by switching to OUTsurance, we save 785 rand a month. It's an extra tank of fuel, it's extra reward money that we pay our officers. When it comes to insurance, OUTsurance is our security company.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Defending WAFCON champions are tackling Mehaladitwe in another glittering international friendly. Both nations described their first match as the first half. Will Banyana Dr. Ellis dominate this 90 minutes, or will the beautiful flowers conquer the pitch battle? Witness the on-field grudge between Abu Makelwa, South South Africa versus Lesotho on Tuesday, 25 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 2. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Hey neighbor, what happened to you last night? We were vibing watching the game and then our team scored and the next thing you were gone.
Askies, I missed the goal. You know, just before our team scored, Eskom came and then our electricity was disconnected.
Yo, so much drama. What happened?
We got a fine for buying electricity tokens from an illegal vendor.
And then your fancy orange jumpsuit?
Oh, just in case I get arrested for not paying the fine, Pela.
Ungathatha chance. Buy your electricity legally. Stop buying electricity from illegal vendors and tampering with electricity meters.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Let me start with a call from Michael in KwaZulu-Natal. Good morning to you, Michael. You want to reflect on the budget or the budget that wasn't?
Yes, I want.
What are you reflecting on if there was no budget? Okay, go ahead.
It's a disaster. you know what will happen now? We're going to change and think like the DA is proper compared to this. The ANC is no longer proper. Even the Tripartite Alliance, including Conservative community, they are no longer proper. And if you listen to Mussolini, it seems like he doesn't know when a decision for ANC was taken for them to increase this VAT by 2%. At least this left hand doesn't know the right hand what it's doing. So it was easy. They were just caught off guard, like how we were said in the morning. They were just caught off guard. They thought that, and ANC must accept that now they are not ruling alone in this country. They are ruling with partners. Yeah. Each time they make decisions, they must contact.
Yeah.
By the fact that they decided to go back and say this is reverted, I think they did something to say, no, we made a wrong error. Because now they is already scoring points here.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a bit of politicking, and you are absolutely right. I have seen that. Thank you for that, Michael.
Thank you.
I have seen that commentary that says what has transpired makes the DA come across as quite pro-poor, and the ANC, which has always been that party that was a disciplined force of the left with a bias towards the working class. Now, in terms of how the politics of it looks. But of course, the part of the narrative is that even some ANC ministers actually stood up and said, no, 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 you don't raise VAT.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's up important information if you're driving from Pretoria down to Joburg on Route 1, the N1. There's a collision between Allendale and Buccleuch. It's involving a military bus. Now, these sort of collisions involving these sort of vehicles can take a lot longer to clear. There's probably more forms that need to be filled out and completed. So it's heavy from Brockfontein interchange all the way down to Buccleuch, the entire section of the N1 through Midrand, and it is likely possibly to be like that for some time. So you might want to think about some alternative routes. The Mike 1 this morning, Boyson's right through to Sandton is jam-packed, and a crash coming out of Soweto on the M1 North up by Main Reef Road Bridge, still causing a big backlog, as is that N3 North at Van Buren. That collision's been there all morning. Delays again out of Alberton and Germiston. Durban having a tough morning. Busy run through the traffic after big rains overnight has left some significant flooding, particularly the N2 inbound severely restricted because of flooding up by the old airport. So coming in from Amonzamtoti, there's a massive queue of traffic. If the N2's that bad, the R102, the side road, will be pretty heavy, and there's some flooding in that sort of Isipingo Beach and Prospecting areas as well on local routes. So just coming off the south coast, very heavy backlogs there. Further up, a collision on the M4 inbound, just up by Blamey Road. So Jacobs through to Clarewood's heavy. Just back to the N2, collision before Spaghetti Junction, causing an extra delay coming up from the M7. The M4, Ruthfirst Highway, Mhlanga to Blue Lagoon, jam-packed both ways again today. Cape Town, breakdown, N1 inbound left lane at Yaga. Just watch for a bit of slowing traffic coming through from Belleville. And the N7 South is very heavy this morning. Backlogs from Dunoon through Plattercliff Road down towards the Bosmansdam Road off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
There's a song that goes, "Money can't buy me love." And that's true. But then they told us all you need is love, which anybody with a mortgage will tell you most certainly is not true. Love won't pay your parking tickets or your student loan. It's also needy. It requires effort, availability, constant care, but more importantly, love requires time. And while money can't buy you love, it can certainly free up some of your time. Time to spend on the things you love, with the people you love. And if you're looking, maybe even time to find the one you love. That's why, after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do the things you love. And don't you love that about investing? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
The Chili Boys have a top-class game plan to relocate from the bottom half. But Babina Noko prefer a position in the top 5. This is the Betway Premiership. United battles it out with United. Witness Mzansi's beautiful game. Chipa United FC versus Sikukune United FC. This Saturday, 22 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Dr. Nikki Alexander, Dr. Thomas Chamberlain, and Dr. Jack Hodgson form a dedicated team of forensic pathologists who try to work out how and why the victim died. This series sees Nikki investigate a murder that's a carbon copy of a case from her past. She soon suspects that the killings are personal to her. But who will believe her? Meanwhile, Jack creates tension when he finds himself aligned with a police complaints investigator over the accidental shooting of a girl by armed police. And a seemingly random killing in the remote countrysides leads Nikki and Jack into the dangerous underbelly of a criminal world. This is Silent Witness, Thursdays and Fridays at 10 p.m. Starts 20 February only on S3. Open up.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
5 minutes to 8, let's focus on labor matters now. And government and unions representing over 1.3 million public servants have reached a 3-year wage deal. The agreement will provide for an above-inflation salary increase of 5.5% in 2025 for workers, including teachers, soldiers, nurses, and doctors. I'm joined now by Ruben Malika, who is the spokesperson for the Public Service Association. So, in the end, Ruben, good morning to you. In the end, it seems it wasn't as contentious and as hard-fought as many had predicted, given the initial stances of the two parties. Tell me what brokered the agreement between yourselves and the government such that we sit where we sit now with this agreement having been approved.
Thank you very much, Thulasizwe, and the listeners of SAFM. One would agree that the current inflation rate that is at 3% has actually eased the negotiations. You remember that we started at 12% at the time when the inflation was around 6 and 7%. So all those things combined, also given that there are critical matters that we have been demanding, such as that they must do away with the issue of saying when you resign or leave the public service, you lose your money that you have saved in housing, the issues of the danger allowance for the police. All those combined, when we go back to our members, the members felt that indeed it's time that we conclude this round of negotiations. So it was eased by the current inflation rate.
Yeah. So tell me a bit more then about the other concessions. The rate at which you've reached agreement is one thing as far as salary increments are concerned. But as you rightly point out, you had other concerns. The loss of benefits related to housing allowance when one resigns, but also these other matters of danger pay. What exactly is the nature of the agreement there?
The nature of the agreement on housing was that in 2015, a resolution of housing said that if you resign from the public service after saving money into housing, you lose that money. So in average, let me say a person that has worked for the public service for 10 years that has been saving, we're looking at a person that would have saved close plus minus 300,000. And we said that, look, the problem of housing is not of the public service. Is a societal problem. if a person leaves, that person should be able to get that money in order to make sure that that person accesses housing. So we have been making this demand year in, year out. Unfortunately, this time around, the employer understood our plight and they said, no, it's true. It really disadvantages public servants who get opportunities elsewhere and they leave the public service. And we have been also having an issue about the increase of danger allowance, especially for those in the police, in the correctional services. And we found out that this time is only the time that the employer managed to agree that there must be an increase that is very substantive. And at the same time, also, one thing that made us to move is the issue of medical. As you know, that medical has always been a thorny matter in the public service, given that public servants are forced to only join GEMS. If you don't join GEMS, you don't get full subsidy of the public service. So although we are not 100% satisfied about GEMS, we've got a lot of issues that need still to be attended with GEMS. Mm-hmm. But the issue that the employer made out to say there will be an increase in April and further increase in July made easy for us to conclude this resolution.
Is there a provision, and perhaps you can clarify this, what's this about state workers who are aged between 55 and 60, potentially being offered 2 weeks' pay for every year that they have worked, and that this is up to a maximum of some 20 years? Is there such a concept on the table?
Look, it's not for the first time. They've tried it some 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to say that people must leave. Unfortunately, the problem, and something that also is going to cause a lot of problems in the public service, is that the people that are most skilled and are scarce skilled are the ones who put up the offer to leave. And end of the day, the government does not allow them to leave. They are actually targeting certain category of employees to leave, and they are not leaving. So we are not worried about that proposal, because at the same time, we know the public service is depleted. Every department is operating at less than 50% of personnel. So you can even agree with me, Thulasizwe. If you go to a hospital today, there are very few nurses, there are very few doctors. If you go to the majority of our schools, quintal one in the rural areas, the ratio is a teacher is 1 to 150 learners in a classroom. So those are the people that they're saying they must leave. Then you ask yourself, is this government really serious about the public service?
Speaking of that then, Ruben, and as a parting shot, I don't believe you would be oblivious and happily walk away having secured this agreement in the negotiations, while the spectre of the budget not being passed, partly because of a proposal for a VAT increase, which we are told in part was meant to fund the public service, and the continued conversation about a high civil service wage bill. How concerned are you about the sustainability of the agreement you've struck against that backdrop?
Look, year in, year out, if you check the audits, the audits that are done by the Auditor General, year in, year out, they show that how much money we lose instead of the money that we want to also try to get through taxes. So the first point, and we have been saying this consistently as the PSA, that if the government can stop bleeding the black hole where money goes and is not accounted for, you'll find that there's not even a need to increase this 2% of taxes. All what they need to do is to deal with the black hole where the money goes, and they must account for that.
All right, thank you for your time this morning. That's Ruben Malika, who is the spokesperson for the Public Service Association. Let's check in now with Ondela Mbana with the latest news.
Thank you, Tula's top stories at 8. Kosatu warned government of the planned VAT hike, and firefighters battle Winelands fire. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good morning. Kosatu says it had warned government that the ANC's proposed 2 percentage points increase in value-added tax would negatively affect workers. The Government of National Unity's disagreement on the issue led to the postponement on Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's budget policy statement to the 12th of next month. It is the first such postponement in the democratic South Africa. Kosatu National spokesperson Zanele Sabela says an increase in VAT would be detrimental to workers in the midst of a high cost of living.
Workers are carrying a very heavy burden. They're overly indebted. They actually are battling to cope with the rising cost of living, and their salaries, their wages that just haven't been keeping up with inflation. So an extra 2% of VAT would have been really, really hard on workers. And so that's why we're relieved that it was stopped and it didn't go through. And we think it's a good thing the government decided to listen to all the warnings and actually take a break so that they can go back and reconsider.
Meanwhile, Godongwana says he will soon meet with various political parties in the Government of National Unity to discuss how to manage the political risk of the proposed VAT increase. He says if the government does not implement the increase, it will be forced to seek another source of raising the money. Increasing public sector wage funding and meeting spending pressure are some of the key motivation for the hike. Godongwana addressed the media in Parliament yesterday.
This is the Government of National Unity. We must live with the reality that people may even go to the set of negotiating items. The bill allows them to do that. That set of discussion may impact on the actual budget as it stands, and it's not going to be like business as usual, where we would go in and be assured that of what we've tabled will be the final outcome. So I don't want to be getting to the numbers game and so on. I'm working on the assumption that there's going to be a thorough negotiation with the different parties.
The Cape Winelands District Municipality says a fire at the Pines-Grove Pass near Wellington in the Barland is still burning out of control. It says the fire started on Tuesday. Municipal spokesperson Joanne Otto says factors including strong winds and dry vegetation are fueling the blaze. Crops damage has been reported in some areas. Otto says firefighting efforts continued overnight.
The firefighting crews, assisted by ground teams from NCC and Cape Nature, had their hands full last night as they engaged in active firefighting on all the lines. The fire lines above Rooshoek and Oaklands farms caused a few problems in the night. However, teams were able to prevent damage to property. At Foxenberg, landowners assisted in creating fire breaks to prevent the fire from moving down onto farmland. The wind subsided during the evening, making for improved firefighting conditions. However, the fire continues to burn out of control.
The Utugela District Municipality in KwaZulu-Natal has attributed its failure to provide residents with water to budget constraints. Thousands of residents of rural areas and townships in Ladysmith say access to water remains beyond their reach. Some of them get water from streams and rivers alongside their livestock. They say they have been without water for more than 60 years. Municipal Mayor Chief Ndando Yinkosi Shabalala.
Vandalism is ongoing. We even decided to increase the number of security guards in our pump stations as well as in our water treatment plants. It's only that we do not have enough money to pay for those security personnel because the core function of Utugela is to provide water, not to hire security companies. But the situation has compelled us to divert from our route of giving people clean water and to hire these security personnel to look after the infrastructure that we're having. But that is the major thing that is dragging back the municipality.
The Trump administration has ordered an end to congestion charges in New York. The order is the administration's latest rollback of former U.S. Joe Biden-era environmental policies. The measure attempts to limit traffic by charging drivers $9 a day or more than 160 rand to drive in parts of Manhattan. The White House has welcomed the move on social media with an image of Trump wearing a crown above the words "Long Live the King." In a media briefing, the state Governor Kathy Hochul said New York was resisting the move.
I don't care if you love congestion pricing or hate it. This is an attack on our sovereign identity, our independence from Washington. And this is, we are a nation of states. This is what we fought for. We are not subservient to a king or anyone else out of Washington. So this is the fight we're in.
Recapping the top story, COSATU says it had warned government that the ANC's proposed 2 percentage point increase in value-added tax would negatively affect workers. I am Mondela Mbana for SFM News Headlines at 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's going to be a busy run for a while from Pretoria down through to Joburg. It's a military vehicle involved in a collision between Allendale and Buccleuch. Quite unusual to see military guys out in the middle of the highway this morning like something else is going on. But it will take a while to clear up given the fact that it is basically a state vehicle. So coming from Brockfontein all the way down to Buccleuch, it's going to be a heavy run through this morning. It already is jam-packed. Still with a crash coming out of Soweto on the M1 North by the Main Reef Road Bridge. That traffic is starting to move. And big queues the other side of town. The N12 and N3 routes out of Albert and Germiston up to a collision by Van Buren Road. Still a lot of pressure coming up from Amman-Mtoti into Durban this morning. Flooding on the N2 and flooding on the alternative local routes. There's a whole pile of pressure from sort of 20 Hill going up towards the old airport area. And Cape Town, the M7, Jakes Kervell Drive, Vangate Mall up towards the N2. That stays heavy. There's a crash as you link off the N7 onto the N2 outbound. And the N1 into town this morning. Quite heavy traffic standing from Plattekloof Hill right through to the city centre in the foreshore area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SAFM sports headlines. It is rugby as we look at the Springbok Sevens who are seeking redemption in Vancouver after their past struggles. And we also have golf. Tiger Woods suffers an embarrassing yardage mix-up in the TGL. Let's find out more around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 8 on this Thursday. It's good to be in your company. We're into the third hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. So we've been dissecting the postponement of the budget speech and basically asking ourselves from multiple angles, what are the implications? We've been asking you to weigh in. Is this a sign of the centre not holding within the multi-party coalition in government at a national level, the government of national unity, or is this a matter of things playing out exactly as they should, with close quarter accountability being exercised within the cabinet itself, such that proposals that are not in the best interests of South Africans are now able to be stopped before they even get out of the starting gates of a cabinet approval. Weigh in on that. The number to dial 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. And in the next few minutes, I will take your calls on that. But among the many things that happened yesterday, right, amidst all of the drama, also this then happened. The mics were on at the end of the briefing by the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, as well as the Director General in the National Treasury, Dr. Duncan Pieterse. Then they start having a conversation that was about how angry the Minister of Finance was about the comments by the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kiswetter, who was opposed to tax increases, and talking about how angry the minister was, as well as gossip, really, the minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni ending up saying that when he's leaving anyway, we are delela. Take a listen to it, and I want you to comment on that as well.
I'm glad you took the question about the commissioner. You answered it much better than I would have.
Oh no, I was a bit, I was worried I should not be angry.
You wanted to go. No, but it did what? Yeah. No, you did what?
No, he's making me angry.
Yes, what can it?
I said, we're discussing, even here, he comes up with this rubbish. I said, how will it help me on the 19th, even now on the 12th? He did not know that we've made provision for him for 2.5 in the new arrangement. But that 2.5 now is gone.
Yes, no, all right, you finally keep. What happened in here?
Yeah, so there was a hot mic moment there. Uhamba nini yena? When is he leaving anyway? This for people who are supposed to be collaborating and cooperating. If you know how these systems work and you've seen in past budget speeches, you will have seen how they come together walking up to this the stairs in Parliament. So weigh in on that and share your own hot mic moments when you were talking about someone saying something unflattering, and it turned out they could hear you. They were within earshot. That and a whole lot more. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Thursday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a morning or a morning, you woke up like this or like this. Mornings love McDonald's. So, choose happy and enjoy a short filter coffee for only R14.90 at McDonald's. What's not to?
The Chili Boys have a top-class game plan to relocate from the bottom half. But Babina Noko prefer a position in the top 5. This is the Betway Premiership. United battles it out with United. Witness Mzansi's beautiful game. Chipa United FC versus Sikukune United FC. This Saturday, 22 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
A convicted murderer on death row, a vicar in a quiet English town, and a maths teacher trapped in a cellar. Cross paths in the most unexpected way. Jefferson Grief is on death row in an American prison for brutally murdering his wife. But it turns out that Grief has a gift. He can solve crimes from inside his cell. English journalist Beth Davenport needs Grief's help. Janice, a woman who recently helped Beth, has gone missing. The last Beth heard from Janice? A text with a blurry image of a man lunging towards the camera. Will Grief crack the case in time? Exactly how is Janice's local vicar involved? And is it really possible to solve a crime before it is committed? Tune into Inside Man, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 12 February only on S3. Open up.
S3.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
So let me take 2 quick voice notes and then some of your calls this morning.
Good morning, Thulas and SAFM listeners. Thulas, what happened yesterday about the budget speech? I was disappointed and happy at the same time. Thulas, we do have problems in our country. We can't just sometimes come up with a solution to say this will be the easiest solution. We need to put our thinking caps and dig deeper to find solution. Thanks. It's Lucy in Gauteng.
Thank you for that, Lucy. Let me listen to this one. Someone reflecting on those hot mic moments when you're saying the wrong thing and the person that you're talking about is actually sometimes within earshot.
Bratulas, this is Nkunze again from Kwachema. In that hot mic clip, for me, Oambani Niena, that was the bomb. That was a nuclear bomb. Oambani Niena.
Yeah, it really is. I can't disagree with you because it says, when is this person leaving anyway? It says a lot. It says a lot about perhaps you have a desire to see the back of this person in that particular position. But anyway, hopefully there'll be explanations and maybe we're making a volcano out of a molehill out of this situation. Din in Mbombela, good morning to you. Thanks for calling. We don't get too many calls from your side. You want to talk to me about the budget?
Yes, look to last quick 2 things, but the first one, the VAT, for me, that one super stroke, thanks to the DA for standing their ground and saying this not in their watch. Then the second thing for me, the tendering system as South Africans. When are we going to wake up and see that this thing is not helping us? This thing is a problem in South Africa. Most of the money, you must go to the securities that are in these government institutions buildings that are there. Look at the money that is spent there. This thing of me buying stationery from Thulasizwe, Whereas Thulasizwe is not really the manufacturer or the supplier of stationery. Thulasizwe goes to a third party and buy it and come and sell to government at a higher price. And they call it BEE. Let's deal with those things first. And this 800 billion almost per annum for government employees, it should be paid to double that number of government employees, the money that they are paying now. If you compare it with the industries where they are operating. So for me, those are the things that we need to deal with. The ANC needs to get it in their head that they've got only 40%. They can't at the last hour come and display something like what they've done yesterday.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Din in Mbombela. Let me take a call from Kwezi in Qumbu. Good morning to you, Kwezi. You want to talk to me about the budget as well?
Yes, good morning, Mngoni. Unjani futhi?
Ngiyaphila kunjani mfo?
Khona mfowethu, Mngoni. The ANC people have been looting the fiscus of hundreds of billions of rands. Now they want to take the easy way out of the impoverishment that they have put us through. In 2018, there was a 1% VAT increase. And you know how it put many South Africans in a difficult position. Instead of increasing the VAT, the government must fix the leakages in the treasury and the fiscus. Number one, there are many leakages. There are many government buildings. It has come to light that the Department of Public Works owns about 1.8 million properties in South Africa. And yet, many government departments still lease some office space from private suppliers. That's number one. And if those properties could be put to good use, we could do away with those office rentals. Number two, and lastly, there are many people, especially the foreign nationals, those Pakistanis who own hardware, who do not pay tax with SARS. Why don't you get those people to pay tax in order to boost the fiscal?
Gotcha.
And spare the poor people of South Africa of the hardship. The ANC, by the way, has become the biggest enemy of the poor with this kind of...
What an indictment. All right, Kwezi, thank you for that. That's Kwezi in Qumbu. Let me take a call from Magdalene. Magdalene, good morning. You want to talk about the budget as well?
Yeah, morning to Thulasizwe. Yes, morning to the listeners. Thulasizwe, this has been waited for, just to say no to the wrong thing. That's what we voted these people into the parliament for. Those who are called the GNU, who come from the other opposition parties and join the ministry positions. We waited for them to just stand up and say no to the wrong decision on behalf of us, the South Africans. We didn't vote for them into parliament for them to sleep there. Yes. We wanted them to wake up and say no, because we are suffering, the South Africans. So we want what belongs to us. What the Freedom Charter said to us, that's what we want. So they must wake up and do as they are voted for.
I love that. Thank you for that, Magdalene. The voice of the people must echo all the way to the chambers of power at union buildings and beyond. Mukwena and Master, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about the budget as well? Please go ahead.
My brother, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
I think this shows the arrogance from the ANC chaps to show that they really don't care about the marginalized and the middle class and the poor and the large part of people who are living in South Africa. I mean, if indeed what is being said is from 15 to 17, whereas we are having so a high rate of unemployment, and our people, even the one which are working, are not earning as much as like they are themselves, those who are working in the parliament, those who are having access to the coffers of the funds of South Africa. So I think the GNU is working. And this only proves that indeed, the ANC people, they really don't care. And we should continue voting for other parties to make sure that we even take them even below 30%. Because they are so arrogant and rude, very much arrogant. So it can't be under the situation where we are in, whereas unemployment is so high, and you keep on increasing the VAT. And one thing again, Thulasizwe, on the configuration, I think it's a good thing what ANC are doing, because ANC are actually harboring members who will be voting for other parties, whereas they are still hiding under the ANC.
All right.
I think many of ANC members are so very much angry, and that will be good.
All right,
to make sure that the thing keeps on going.
Thank you for that. That's Mukwena there in Rustenburg. Luba in Gugulethu, good morning to you. You want to talk about VAT, the mooted 2% increase. What about it?
Tulas, it's very sad what's happening currently in the country, and it shows that we have a deep lack of leadership. When the ANC government, I'm going to focus on them, when they were here in Cape Town to celebrate their birthday, they went to Khayelitsha. But on that very same night, they were clubbing in hotels. And I happened to meet them the following day on a Sunday in this beautiful hotel. And I could see, these guys, they forgotten about leadership. They're living their life. They're living their soft life. They're not in touch with the people on the ground in Gugulethu, in Khayelitsha. It's just what can I say, a campaign. We are just a flock of sheep. Every time they want to come, they go to a Lokshini. And how do you even justify the 2%? How do you even justify that? The last time they increased it to 1%. Even the middle class is getting dissipated in this country. The middle class is suffering.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So I feel like the GNU, this government they have, is not in touch with the people, and therefore it's easy to implement 2% to them to cover whatever cost. Look at the cabinet. Look at all the deputy ministers. I don't even know some of them.
Gotcha.
And there's other departments, like for example, that small business department. That lady Stella lady, she doesn't do anything. That department should be collapsed.
Sure. All right, Luba, thank you for that. That's Luba there in Gugulethu. Thank you for those calls. Solomon and Ganyi, can I ask that I call you back a bit later on so that we can take your calls? We will make time to have these conversations further towards the end of the show.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
In the Arena is a docu-series that takes an in-depth look at the life and career of the legendary tennis player Serena Williams, offering a behind-the-scenes glimpse into her journey, both on and off the court. It explores her rise to tennis dominance, challenges, and personal experiences. Do not miss out on a great story of incredible impact. Catch In the Arena on Saturdays at 3 p.m. on SABC3. Alternatively, at 9 p.m. on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturdays and Thursdays. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
The Department of Higher Education and Training, the Commission for Gender Equality CGE, and Higher Health will launch an outreach campaign next week, which is aimed at making campuses safer and tackling gender-based violence. This initiative comes after alarming findings from a CGE report on sexual harassment and abuse within higher education institutions. Let's speak now to Jabuba Loyi, who is the spokesperson for the Commission for Gender Equality. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. I imagine that this is informed by your observations and findings that came out in that report which you did last year. Just tell me the context and background that has led you to identifying the lack of safety and gender-based violence and sexual harassment on campuses and leading to this campaign.
Thank you very much, Thulas, and good morning to the listeners of SAFM. We as a commission has done various studies, the legal department and the research department, to look at how the issues of gender-based violence are being handled at various universities. And we did an intense study to ascertain what is it that the issues on the ground, not only talking to universities when we call them to the gender transformation hearing, but also to the students on the ground to see what is it, those. And you find that the issues were very appalling to us, to say the least, that both students within the campus and outside the campus were suffering issues of gender-based violence, and some of the issues were as a result of the late payment of funds by NEFSAS to some of the landlords where these students were staying. Hence, the commission will be also engaging with NEFSAS going forward to ascertain how do we then help the situation. We have done this study not only to showcase these issues that are happening and arrive, but also to try to come with avenues how to help the university. Hence, we're working with the Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Higher Health to arrest the scourge of it. It's a carnage. Some universities, the SRC, like University of Nelson Mandela University, they are law unto themselves. The things that they do to the first-year students, some of the students, they result in also selling their bodies in Northwest University, Salt Lake University. These issues to us are not immune to other universities. We have got sex for marks. We have got some of the universities, like University of Venda and Limpopo. There are also issues that are rearing its ugly head there. Yeah. Hence, we're launching this campaign on Monday to look with the baseline of the reports coming from the Commission for Gender Equality.
So when I spoke to the new NSFAS board chairperson a few days ago, she wasn't dismissive of the phenomenon of so-called sex for accommodation in private accommodation, premises. But she did say that there are senses that this is not so widespread. Do you have a different sense that it is more widespread than perhaps NSFAS may be aware of?
You see, Thulas, the mere fact that, we're talking about this and students are coming to us and SRC students are calling the commission, it means it's widespread. The problem with our society, when we want to sugarcoat things and take it as a crisis, imagine a child from Mpumalanga, Thulas, going to Eastern Cape, doesn't even speak the language there. The first day, the university doesn't even cater for them. They have to roam the street and they get these unscrupulous people outside the campus. And what do? They rape them. They do all sort of nefarious things on them. So when we sugarcoat them and say the board said, no, it's not widespread, it is widespread. It is something that the commission is aware. It is something that the students are even calling. They even call myself to say, these things are happening. What is it that the commission is going to do to help us? Hence, we engage with the Deputy Minister and the Department of Higher Education, which we're grateful for this partnership so that we arrest the scourge of this and also bring the heightened awareness throughout. Because should we say it's not happening, it's not widespread, it is widespread, it is there throughout these universities, and people are taking advantage of these innocent students.
All right, thank you for that. That's Jabuba Loyi, who is the spokesperson for the Commission for Gender Equality. Let's check in now with Ondela Mbana with the latest news headlines.
Thank you, Thulas. In the news headlines, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa says that it is pleased with the postponement of Finance Minister Enoch Godongana's 2025 budget to the 12th of next month. 2 suspects arrested for killing a police officer in Springs in Ekurhuleni will be back in a local magistrate court next Thursday. Ndutuzelo Mana and Benjamin Nduli appeared in court yesterday and the matter was postponed. And torrential rain has caused more flooding in the rural rural areas of the Eastern Cape. The old dilapidating Greenville Hospital in Mbizana in the eastern part of the province is one of the affected facilities. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Stays heavy through Midrand this morning. A crash involving a military vehicle just after Allendale Road, and the traffic is significant. It's all the way back through to Samrand Road. Will take a while to get that scene properly cleared up and cleared away. So if you're on the run from Pretoria to Joburg, just factor in some heavy queues for a little while longer this morning. R59 coming up through Randval. If you're leaving the Vaal area on your way through to Joburg, just as you come up through Randval Road, very heavy on the 59. A lot of diversions. Delays on the side road there as well. And the N3 North heading up towards Giluli stays busy with a crash earlier this morning at Van Buren, taking a while to finally sort out the last bits and pieces. Durban bound coming out of Pinetown M13 onto the N3 via Paradise Valley is heavy. There's a crash before you get to the Pavilion Mall shopping centre that's causing that delay. Flooding at Prospector, still backlogging traffic on the N2 coming in from the Tweedy hillside. And Cape Town fairly heavy on the N1 queues from Plattercliff Road all the way through to the city centre behind that Kubo Road and Marine Drive. Both of those routes coming in through that sort of Brooklyn and Pardon Island area in towards that N1 quite slow as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey, good morning to you once again, Zai. So the Springboks Sevens didn't have such a great showing last year, right? And now they are in Vancouver in Canada, and they're hoping that, they'll get a lift and
they'll get a lift. I like that. I think, yes, they'll definitely want to bring a lift to this momentum that they need. And they don't have the likes of, Zane Davids, but looking forward to plenty of zeal. I think they have all the ingredients, including lift, for their mission to lift off. In Vancouver, they've got co-captain Impie Visser, who says the squad is more aligned than ever, and they're ready to bring and turn the teamwork into triumph. They've had strong performances in Cape Town and Perth, and they've shown they do have the firepower. It's all about execution. Their first test will be tomorrow, and that's against New Zealand. Let's hear from the co-captain of the Blitzboks, Impie Visser.
Yeah, just quickly reflecting on the past two Vancouver tournaments wasn't our best performance, and just where the team was, I think, to where we are now, it's worlds apart. So I think what management have done, just to turn the team around, and I think it just shows that relationships are probably at the end of the day the most important thing in the team, where maybe in the past relationships weren't as healthy as it's supposed to be, and yeah, it's just testament to management creating that environment so the players can flourish.
Springbok Sevens utility back, Nadine Roos says it's an honour to represent South Africa for the first time in the Challenger Series. Roos is part of the SA Rugby 12-player squad competing in the opening series between the 1st and 2nd of March at Athlone Stadium in Cape Town. She says the team will do all it takes to win the series in order to qualify for the HSBC Sevens playoff tournament in May.
It's quite a big privilege and honour to be part of the group, to again help the group qualify for the HSBC Sevens World Series. And yeah, it's a big task at hand to actually, it's crucial for the team to win both of these tournaments, to actually have a good log standing going into the third tournament.
In the meantime, Warren Gatland says he left his role as Wales head coach after being weighed down by criticism, including his former players. Gatland left his role following a 22-15 Six Nations rugby defeat in Italy, a result which extended Wales' losing record to 14 tests and saw them drop to an all-time low of 12th in the Rugby World Rankings. Soccer action, Kylian Mbappe, the star for Real Madrid. His hat-trick had inspired a 3-1 victory over Manchester City in the second leg of their Champions League knockout playoff, sealing a 6-3 win on aggregate. Borussia Dortmund clinching their spot in the Champions League last 16 after a goalless draw against Sporting. The return legs was just a formality after the German side posted a 3-0 victory in Lisbon. Mohamed Salah scored one goal and set up the equaliser by Trent Alexander-Arnold in Liverpool's 2-2 draw at Aston Villa that stretched its lead in the Premier League to 8 points. And tennis action, Daniel Medvedev beat second-round opponent Zizou Bergs for the loss of just 3 games in the Qatar Open, booking a quarter-final place 6-2, 6-1. And the second seed, Alex de Minaur, sealed a place in the Qatar Open quarter-finals. He beat Botic van der Zandloop 6-4, 6-4. And finally, golf great Tiger Woods had a moment to forget in his latest TGL match, proving even legends can mess up their numbers. Playing for Jupiter Links, Tiger thought he had 99 yards to the hole instead of 199, leading to an embarrassing miscalculation. He picked up a wedge, hit the ball 100 yards and shook as it landed well short of the green. His teammates Kevin Kisner and Tom Kim couldn't contain their laughter, and neither could the internet. Woods later called it one of the most embarrassing moments of his career. That's Tiger Woods having a rough day. We have John Gericke. He'll be keeping it on par with more sport on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
So, Ntauleng, part of the benefit of the budget speech not going ahead yesterday is that we got a very nice preview. So we've got a very good sense, at least on the factors and numbers that won't change, perhaps, when the budget is finally delivered. Tell us what we are gleaning from that then about the National Treasury's sense of the Eskom debt plan and that situation.
And you're absolutely right, Liz. We were able to sift through that draft budget, and in it, Treasury proposed a revised plan for Eskom's 254 billion rand debt relief program, breaking it down into 2 tranches, totaling 50 billion rands over 4 years. Now, this adjustment reflects Eskom's improved financial position, with the utilities debt decreasing by 24 billion rand less than initially projected. A Business Day article says the new plan involves advancing 40 billion rands in 2025-26 to redeem debt maturing in April 2026 and 10 billion rand in 2028-29 for debt maturing in May 2028. Now, this debt relief will eventually be converted into government equity. Now, Eskom's financial struggles began with a 428 billion rand debt burden. The relief program aims to strengthen its balance sheet and enable necessary investments to reduce power constraints. Interestingly, the draft budget Treasury Treasury made no new allocations to state-owned entities, particularly Transnet, which many expected to get a bailout. Of course, there's just a move emphasizing Gorongwana's tough love approach when it comes to those state-owned enterprises.
Yeah, but he got a bit of the tough love himself yesterday. From the other parties. He got some tough love. And at the same time, Ntauleng, all this talk about a potential 2% hike in value-added tax was being watched by the markets, including retailers. Tell me about that and what the reaction was on the JSE.
So that proposed VAT increase in the draft budget from 15 to 17%, really sparking intense debates in the country. And in essence is what many believe led to the postponement of that budget. We do know that this hike would significantly impact consumers' purchasing power, which in turn would affect retailers. Now, that sector reacted negatively to yesterday's news, with most retailers seeing their stocks drop. Clothing retailers in particular took the biggest hits, with Mr. Price plunging 4%, TFG losing 3%, and Pepco falling 1.9%. This downturn reflects concerns that a VAT hike would reduce consumers' discretionary spending power. In contrast, grocers and food retailers suffered less, likely due to talks of adding more items to the zero-rated basket and potential inflationary hikes in social social grants. Now, the proposed VAT increase has sparked concerns about its impact on low-income households who would be disproportionately affected. Some experts say the government's decision to postpone the budget has given rise to hopes that alternative solutions might be explored moving forward.
Lastly, Ndauleng, yesterday was a bit of a bumpy ride, shall we say, in the markets. What kind of a day can we look forward to today?
It seems like we just might see markets on the back foot yet again today, just following that budget delay, which is still being digested, as well as, Trump's policies coming and trade policies coming through. Those announcements also still being digested in markets, and they have impacted global sentiment, which would then filter through to our local markets this morning. In terms of earnings, traders will be waking up to numbers from South Sea owner Blue Label Telecoms and miner Gold Fields. And then on the currency front, the rand still surprisingly trading stronger this morning, sitting at 18.49 to the dollar from over 18.50 an hour ago. Globally, sentiment taking strain with both U.S. futures and Asian markets in the red as traders just fret over Trump's trade policies.
All right, thank you for that. Always with her eye on the money, that is Ndauleng Lechela. She's kept you updated on the economy, business, and the markets for the last 2.5 hours or so here on The Morning Brief.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, I want to take one or two of your calls as well as some of your WhatsApp voice notes on the various topics that we've been covering this morning, with all the reflections that have been happening around the issue of the budget and the postponement, as well as some of the proposals that we glean were to be contained in that, as well as what we've been talking about, hot mic moments where you thought no one was listening, but someone actually was. So let me start with the voice notes now.
Good morning, Thulas. The bullying tactics and arrogance of the ANC has come to an end. Imagine if ANC has majority. They will have used the majority principle in parliament to force this 2% VAT increase. But thanks to the GNU parties for rejecting the 2% VAT increase.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let me play another one that has to do, of course, with that incident that played itself out where the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, Minister in the Presidency, Kumbuzo Nchabeni, as well as the Director General in National Treasury were talking while the mics were still there. For some reason, for some strange reason, I don't know, strange reason, they thought that those mics were not picking up what they were saying, but they actually were talking about Edward Kisweta, the SARS Commissioner.
Good morning, Thulas, and a great show every day. Thulas, it happened to me earlier last month. One of my friends called another friend and put her on speaker, right? So what happened is he went on and on to say the reason why we are doing things is because we want to be elected. So yeah, it happens in many occasions. So I'm not going to say my name because the culprit will know I spoke about her. It's a her.
Yeah. I get you. That would become another hot mic moment. You talking to me and then someone else is hearing the conversation. Yeah, but also putting someone on speaker can also be risky, right? Because you don't know what the other person will get on the phone and say. And by the time you say, hang on, you're on speaker, they've said some pretty disparaging things about another person. Let me take a call from JJ in Polokwane. Good morning to you, JJ. Oof, what an interesting topic. You want to talk about the effects of Bantu education. What about those?
Thulas, good morning. There is this guy who once lived here, Hendrik Sarvoort. He was in parliament, and then he said the effects and impact of Bantu education, the one who will eradicate that will be a genius. And he meant exactly what is happening now, the situation that we are in today. Here is the minister who says, look, we need to assist our African people, especially the have-nots. And then they said, how do you do it? And then he says, let's increase the VAT and we remove VAT from food, because those people, they live on handouts, hand to mouth. When they go to buy food, the food basket has gone down. So we need to zero rate the food and increase the tax, the VAT. And you know what the VAT does?
Mm-hmm.
It hits these people, the rich people, hard. Those are the people who buy big houses, big cars, and all those type of things.
Mm.
And he removed that from the food that the ordinary person on the street relies on. And the very same people who are hit hard by the VAT, they stood up and hold the megaphones and say, yes, the poor will suffer. When in actual fact, it is hitting the rich very hard. And let me indicate this. Why they do that? It's because they don't have information. It's ignorance of Bantu education.
So, JJ, just very quickly.
The speech that we are talking about, which is not delivered, they were dissecting it in 405 and indicate that the food are going to be exempted from VAT. You see, it's there.
So your understanding, JJ, as a parting shot, your understanding is that a VAT increase would hit the rich more than it would hit the poor?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because even at the same time, you need to sustain the SRD grant. And it's immediate. If it was a long-term thing, they can look at other types of taxes.
All right.
But this one, it's immediate.
I've heard
and it supplements the SRD and everything. And even the big that we're talking about, basic income grants.
All right. JJ, thank you for that. That's JJ there in Polokwane. I think he's more comforted as well by the zero rating of a number of items. I was reading somewhere that actually at the start of this concept of value-added tax, only bread and, is it Millimil, were part of the zero rated and excluded. So the idea was that you must have as few exclusions as possible. But as we speak now, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking about some 19 food items being exempted from value added tax. And there was talk of adding to that list had the 2% gone ahead. So interesting times. Let me take a call from Solomon in Mkanyagute. Good morning to you, Solomon. Also on the issue of the budget this morning.
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to your listeners. You see, South African problems does not require simplicity, particularly when you deal with matters of budget. At the heart of this 2% VAT increase are the ideological differences of the parties that are role players in the GNU. And the ANC bearing the responsibility of increasing the social network versus those who are pushing for a decrease of the wage bill and other austerity measures. That's where it is. And when you have to provide free health, education, and other services, you have to find money for you to be able to do that. Whilst others, they are not so pro-poor. Hence, they are pushing that there has to be a decrease in the wage bill, a decrease in other services. I think as a country, we should be more cautious and painstaking when we deal with these issues.
Okay.
We have to give at one hand and take at the other hand.
So Solomon, I hear you. Please indulge me. Let me tease out your thinking a little bit more. Which one is more pro-poor? Imposing a tax that would increase, ordinary everyday goods for people, including people who are living on a social relief of distress grant, 370 rand, or cutting, controlling. If you have to choose something, which one would you choose? That tax increase or trying to control how much you spend on paying people who are already employed and are not earning millions of rand a year, but actually are certainly better off in terms of their income than the people who are earning that 370 rand a month SRD grant?
You just said it, Thulasizwe, that there are there is a proposal to zero rate some of the basic foods that are normally consumed by the poor. It means that when they buy other foodstuffs which don't fall into the category of the basic supplies, then there comes a relief for the poor.
I see. I hear you. Solomon, thank you. It's always interesting to hear these different takes, right? And it's beautiful because, as they're saying, isiZulu, what abantu abaying anhlanye bengewona manzi, if my isiZulu is correct. People don't just flow in one direction as if it's water. This is the beauty of it all right? We'll continue with the show in the next few minutes. Let's take a quick traffic update now.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
If you're in a hurry to go between Pretoria and Joburg, avoid the N1 this morning. A military vehicle crash just after Allendale, very heavy from Samran. The R21, R24 option looks good into that side of Joburg, or the N14, 511 through four ways becomes an option as well. A breakdown in Buccleuch going north, so N3 from Limbro Park, N1 from Rivonia. The connections to the N1 north are backed up as well. Flooding in the Amanzam Toti CBD area. There will be some lane restrictions and closures there. Closures around Isipingo Beach side of the N2, flooding on the main N2 as well as you come up towards that old airport area, so stays very slow through the Prospect and region. And Cape Town, the N1 inbound looking fairly heavy this Thursday with queues from around about sort of the bottom of Plattekloof Hill all the way through to the elevated freeway. Behind that, Marine Drive is quite badly backed up on the run through Pardon Island in towards that N1 congestion. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, we'll take your calls in just a moment, but let me take this story. Let's speak now to Paseka Letsatsi, who is the spokesperson of the South African Social Security Agency. And the reason we're taking that conversation is because the clock is ticking towards the deadline for Sassa grant beneficiaries to migrate from the current Sassa Gold Card to the Postbank Black Card. It's a massive logistical undertaking, and we've been monitoring how it goes, and it's also been in the eyesight and the horizons of the Minister of Social Development, Nokuzola Tolashe. Let's speak to Paseka Letsatsi. Good morning to you, Paseka. The days are ticking by. We've got a few days to go before the deadline for that final migration from the Gold Card to the Postbank Black Card. In terms of the numbers, where do we stand in terms of that conversion from the one card to the other?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and thanks for having me. We must confess that the numbers are quite concerning, because out of 3.5 million beneficiaries who have the gold card of Sassa, just below 1 million of them have converted or swapped to the black Postbank card. That number is extremely concerning, because it means above 2.5 million beneficiaries have not come forward to swap their card.
So given that reality, are we still looking at going ahead and phasing out completely the gold card, the Sassa gold card? Is there a world in which you see an extension and that gold card perhaps continuing to coexist alongside the black card from Postbank?
From where we are, Thulasizwe, we don't think the central bank will budge to giving the extension of the gold cards, basically because of its security features, which are highly compromised. But in our interaction with Postbank, we have agreed that there are some contingency measures which they have to implement so that beneficiaries of social grants can continue to have access to their money. One, they are introducing the cardless cash withdrawal, which we can say e-wallet or cash send or whatever. But secondly, people will have to go and get this money from post office, and that's another option which we did not want. We just want people to get the money within the framework of being comfortable with the black card. There are engagements between Postbank and the central bank, but we think that whatever measures which are put in place must not put the beneficiaries of social grant in a bad way.
Not to be cynical, Paseka, but you and I know when you're now talking about solutions such as cashless, cardless cash withdrawals, the so-called e-wallets, as well as people going to the post office, you and I know from history and our background that you are likely, one, in the instance of people going to the post office, you are likely to have long queues that may be problematic for people, many of whom are frail. And secondly, with this cardless cash transfers, you're likely to run into serious problems there. So how can you guarantee that those stopgap solutions will work?
We fully agree. I fully agree with you, Thulasizwe. And I think what we have done as an organization, we have offered, remember Sassa cannot do the card swap. That's the responsibility of Postbank. But we have offered our services. We have offered that we'll open our offices from 6 in the morning until 7:30 in the evening. We have also offered to have some of our staff members to go to those sites. Thirdly, we have agreed with them that they must open more sites because we have made an observation that in some instances, Thulasizwe, you have about only 2 tellers operating. We said at least they must know, they have the information of how many people are in a particular locality. So they need to make sure that they have resources and open as many tellers as possible so that we can have as many people doing that. But I agree with you that one, we have experienced snake queues, we have experienced problems, but secondly, we have tried to make sure that people don't get their cash, all of it. That's why there's a cut. You can just imagine if you have to go and get all your cash, you walk out of the gate, before you even get at the corner, you get marked. So it takes us back to where there were problems. But Thulasizwe will do everything from our side as the South African Social Security Agency to make sure that we safeguard our beneficiaries, because at the end of the day, Thulasizwe, these are beneficiaries of Sassa, even if they bank with Postbank.
Absolutely.
But one other thing, Thulasizwe, is that which we need to make mention here is that beneficiaries who have their own private bank don't have to swap anything. If you bank with Bank X, you don't have to do anything. But secondly, the regulation 26(1)A stipulates that if you come and apply for a grant, you must choose the method of payment which you want. For an example, we don't compel you to go to Postbank.
Yeah. So lastly then, Paseka, for the benefit of someone who's catching on to this conversation now and is wondering why are we again railroading ourselves towards an impossible deadline? Just remind us, you said earlier on that you don't think that the central bank will budge on this issue. Why does this need to happen, and what is the role of the central bank, and why do you think they will not budge on this?
Thulasizwe, this is the 4th extension granted for Postbank. The swap didn't start now. Card swap didn't start now. It's for 4th time that the extension is granted. But secondly, the security features of this gold card is highly compromised. And I know that the fraudsters are listening. I'll just try to be economic with what I'm going to say here publicly. One, the card does not have the name. So it means if you walk and you drop your card, and I can just guess, old generation, older people, if you know that they were born in 1957, the likelihood of the fact that their PIN is 1957 is very high. So all I need to know is when you were born, I get your card and I go in and withdraw your money. But secondly, Thulasizwe, people have been, I'm sure you have seen this thing on social media, where people have been breaking in the warehouse, where they've been stealing the machines to upload. All you need is someone who can just go and steal the ID of Thulasizwe. And I know that Thulasizwe is at the age where he qualifies to get a grant. And voila, I bought someone who I can connive with in Sassa, and then we upload the information. That's why someone was caught with 1,000 cards at an ATM withdrawing the money of the most vulnerable society of our country.
No, I hear you, Paseka. And a few years ago, while on a jog here in Johannesburg, I myself noticed and picked up quite a number of those gold cards that were stranded on the side of the roads. I suppose it talks to the security features that you just mentioned. That's Paseka Letsatsi, who is the national spokesperson of the South African Social Security Agency, Sassa. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for your engagement. The Talking Point with Kethi Motlatlana is up next here on SAFM after the news.
Thank you, Tulas and the team. Top stories. NUMSA reacts to the postponement of the budget policy statement, and torrential rain causes more floods in the Eastern Cape. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good morning. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa says that it is pleased with the postponement of Finance Minister Enoch Godongana's 2025 budget to the 12th of next month. This follows Government of National Unity Partners' dramatic block over a tax hike disagreement. A muted 2% VAT hike is at the core of the unprecedented postponement of the budget. NUMSA spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola says a tax hike would be a blow to South Africa's working class.
We don't support that government should increase VAT. It's a regressive tax policy which affects the working class and the poor. So we are happy that they failed in implementing that or in proposing that. We must also comment on the irony of the fact that the DA took advantage of that situation and is using it to its advantage and making it seem that it is more progressive than the ANC. And this for us is something that NUMSA consistently warned the ANC about.
Meanwhile, COSATU says it had warned government that the ANC's proposed VAT increase. The Labour Federation's national spokesperson Zanele Sabela says a VAT increase would be detrimental to workers in the midst of a high cost of living.
Workers are carrying a very heavy burden. They're overly indebted. They actually are battling to cope with the rising cost of living. And their salaries, their wages, that just haven't been keeping up with inflation. So an extra 2% of VAT would have been really, really hard on workers. And so that's why we're relieved that, it was stopped and it didn't go through. And we think it's a good thing the government decided to listen to all the warnings and actually take a break so that they can go back and reconsider.
2 suspects arrested for killing a police officer in Springs in Ekurhuleni will be back in a local magistrate's court next Thursday. Ndutuzelo Mana and Benjamin Duli appeared in court yesterday and the matter was postponed. They are accused of gunning down Captain Wynan Dutoy, who was attached to Springs SAPS. The incident happened on Sunday during a robbery at a supermarket. Hawks spokesperson Thulasizwe Simelane.
Captain Dutoy was shot and killed on Sunday, the 16th, during a robbery at a supermarket in Gedelt Springs. The pair made their first appearance at the Springs Magistrate Court. Mana, who is currently in hospital, appeared in absentia. The matter has been postponed to Thursday, the 27th of February, for further investigations.
Torrential rain has caused more flooding in the rural areas of the Eastern Cape. The old dilapidating Greenville Hospital in Bizana in the eastern part of the province is one of the affected facilities. Staff have been mopping up some of the flooded offices. Residents of Bizana have been calling for the construction of a new hospital in the area. The hospital caters for hundreds of people in the Alfred Nzo district. There are concerns that its poor state poses a danger to patients and staff employees. Australia and Papua New Guinea are beginning negotiations today on a full defence treaty between the two countries. A formal treaty will strengthen Australia's position as PNG's key security partner. The BBC